I can. Uh-oh. Yeah, on the stream on my phone, I can hear the song, but not you. Are you guys ready for another podcast? Let's go! It's the Nintendo Prime Podcast, episode 14. Is everything working? I pray everything's working. I can't tell because my screen is covered up, everyone. I've been having a little technical difficulties to start the stream. That's all right. How you guys doing tonight? Welcome to Nintendo Prime Podcast, episode 14, everybody. All right, so tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Paul Gale from the Paul Gale Network. How's it going, man?
Hey everyone, good. I'm good. Thanks for having me, Nate.
You guys let me know if the volume's good, if I got to turn myself up or down or whatever. So we have a special podcast for you guys. This is the first podcast that's really happened since the E3 time. We did have a post-E3 podcast. Briefly, we haven't had one since. As you guys can tell, my co-host is not here. Mr. Eric Muller, who usually is sitting over here, we usually have a completely different look on our podcast, isn't here, unfortunately. He was all good at the beginning of the week, and then yesterday, late last night, he's like, so I can't do the podcast this week. I got family stuff going on. And I go, well, that sucks. The show must go on. So, it's just going to be me and Paul tonight. Eric should be back next week. I'd like to say, I don't know. I think what happened is we got out of the habit of doing the podcast over like a month and a half. And so he stopped scheduling his time for it, even though he said he could make it. But you know what? That's all right. We'll give him an extra week to get back. The show must go on. And we have a great slew of topics for you guys today because, believe it or not, we haven't done a podcast since Switch OLED was announced. So that's like, what? That's a kind of a big deal, at least this year. So we got to talk about that. And obviously there's all those impressions out there at this point. We got Skyward Sword HD. I want to get some thoughts, impressions on that game as well. We're going to also kind of revisit the old, the Switch Pro stuff that people don't like talking about that usually gets people to instantly dislike. And if Nintendo even needs a more powerful platform sooner rather than later, this could end up being next gen. It doesn't even have to be a upgraded model. We'll get into that conversation. And then we're going to take a look ahead at our most anticipated games and why they're our most anticipated games. Because there's quite a slate of games just on Switch, let alone considering all platforms out there. I know the Halo Infinite beta just wrapped up recently, and a lot of people are really loving that one, which is shocking considering that most people have not liked 343's attempts at Halo. So, at least I'd say a chunk of gamers on the internet have not liked their games. I guess I shouldn't say everyone. All right, so let's get into this. I hear some people saying the stream is lagging. I don't see any lag on my end. I have it up on 2 different screens. So I'm just checking. I'm waiting for it to see if it hiccups or lags. For me, it's fine.
Looks good here.
Yeah, I think everything's going fine. I think we're all good. And some people saying it's good. Some people saying it was lagging for me. Yeah, I have no idea. So if it's good for some people, and okay, whatever. People are saying it's fine now. So whatever. I don't know. Nothing I could do about it, to be honest. It's lagging. It's lagging. My computer's not lagging, so that would be the only thing I could fix on my end. All right. So first up, before we get into anything, I don't think a lot of people even know who you are, Paul. You want to explain, like, you're more of an industry veteran than I am, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So you want to explain to people, like, a little bit about your background so they kind of know, hey, why should we maybe care just a little bit about what this guy has to say?
Sure. I'm 38, so I'm a lifelong Nintendo fan. Been gaming for a long time, but I got my first start in the industry, if you want to call it an early start, working just like a lot of people do at Electronics Boutique, formerly or what would become EB Games or GameStop, Software, etc., at the mall. And then, I had an opportunity from Konami to go to E3 and cover the event from them and talk about what the show was like from a new gamer's perspective. So at my first E3, which was in 2000, I was actually only 16 years old, so still technically too young to go, but under Konami's supervision, I was allowed to. Got to provide feedback for them and for some websites, still fairly early internet days in 2000. And then, I got in by my own means for the second show in 2001. I'm kind of giving you a how did I get into like the bigger part of the industry though, and just kind of being in the right place at the right time, not being afraid to talk to journalists that I respected. At E3 2001, second show, at that year I was a part of Electronics Boutique. That was how I got in. And I just happened to be at Nintendo's booth. Luigi's Mansion was being demoed, and then Mark McDonald and Dan Shu from Electronic Gaming Monthly, they came up, and the Nintendo representative said to me, could you step aside? We need the journalist to come in for Game of the Show. So I said, all right. I looked who it was, and they were like, oh man, my fans. I mean, I was their fan of EGM, and they played. Sorry for taking your spot, no problem. I waited, talked to them afterwards, fast forward, kept in contact. Just being a part of their forums, eventually they gave me a job working for Gamers.com. Like, hey, remember me from the show? E3? Yeah, you were the guy with Luigi's Mansion. Cool. And then from there, that was 2002. I started working for Gamers.com, and I worked for Gamers, and eventually OneUp.com until 2012. Hitmob.com came along the way. I worked for them from 2009 to 2011. In between all of this, I started PaulGaleNetwork.com, which was, kind of a means of trying to gather and introduce different people from different walks of the industry, because at that time I already met a good amount of people from different, places in the video game world, and folks that I was surprised might not have met each other or had ideas. So the original idea for my website was introduce artists to people looking for artists, or musicians looking for people who wanted to hire music. And it kind of just became a variety site where I talk about games and do some of my other stuff, which is martial arts related and whatnot. And I write for Shag Mag, which is an adult online, magazine that focuses on ladies and whatnot. But I've got a video game column in there, and
Nothing wrong with that.
Been a part of video gaming forever, but writing and stuff for 20 years, into 21 E3s. I've been doing video game themed pumpkin carving since 1998, which is pretty cool. Nintendo Power interviewed me. I'm a video game character in Street Fighter 4. Not to talk too much in the beginning of the show, but Capcom made me a 3D polygonal character, and actually in Street Fighter 4 over on the European cruise ship stage as an NPC. They scanned my face and put me in the game because they're like, oh, you're like the real life Ryu, martial arts, video game guy. So yeah, I love video games, love Nintendo. Been around for a while. Thank you for having me on the show too. I've always enjoyed being around, supporting people that I like personally. And I think that's the thing that helped me at E3s and it helped get me early exposure was, I see someone that looks cool, I give them an opportunity. talk to. They're kind to me. You find a good relationship and you make things work. Watching you, Nate, and all of your podcasts and how you treat guests and talk to fans and stuff like that. Professional, fun, all rolled into one. So I'm happy to be on your show and I appreciate it. And you know, good Nintendo fans, good gamers, getting along with each other. That's awesome stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about the
That's-
professional part, but
That's the intro. Well, professional in reporting. I know most people here are Nintendo fans, probably first and foremost, myself included. But I have to say, I have covered everything. I've broken some different stories. Back in 1UP with Street Fighter 4, that was my baby. On my own in my Paul Gale Network days of website coverage, I broke PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. So some people here might be like, is that Paul Gale Network guy, that PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale guy? Yes, that was me. And the reason why I brought that up is it all goes back to what we're going to talk about later tonight, Nintendo Switch Pro, and how controversial it is to sometimes have right information or wrong information, how people see that. I've been on both ends of that, so I know what that's like, but
no, it's all
yeah.
it's all good. I've definitely heard of you before. I know we've had some light conversations over the last year or so. Nothing major. So I'm just glad that you are a fan of my content and all that. And thank you to all of our viewers out there, whether you're listening to the audio version, which I know you audio people are getting mad at me. I know there's like 2 missing episodes. I'll get it taken care of, all right? I'm a busy guy over here. Parent of 3, full-time job, full-time college, plus this YouTube stuff. I always say, just be thankful you get any content from me, because I don't even know how I find time to even do this stuff, let alone play games. I mean, let's just got to squeeze that in there sometimes, too. Somehow, though, I will say this. Despite being really busy, I always find time to play games, and I always find time to watch my favorite shows. So I guess, it's one of those things that you just make time for the things you want to do. And one thing I should be making more time for is hitting the gym. You know all about that, Mr. Personal Trainer over there. But but that's all right. I'm in the midst of an intermittent fast at the moment. But I am going to have a little bit of booze tonight, guys. For anyone who wants to, any super chats tonight, I'll just do random shots. I don't know what I want to do. Whatever I feel like doing at the time. And Loki Ravenstorm kicked us off with a $5 super chat earlier. Celebrating us hitting 40 likes. We're actually at 50 likes now. I see 80 people watching. Why are we not at 80 likes? What's wrong with you? You not enjoying the show? I know we haven't talked about games yet. Let me get this down. Actually, while I do this shot quick here, I'm doing a little shot of UV Cherry. Let's talk about the Switch OLED. Let's kick off that conversation here because we have not talked about it really much on this channel besides like the announcement video of it. And then I did like one live stream where I answered a few questions. But there's been a lot of previews and stuff that's come out even recently. The European previews have come out. And pretty much everyone has like the same thoughts. And it seems to be if you play Switch in handheld, this is a significant upgrade. If you don't, it's not. Because it's the same internal components, same resolution, same clock speed, same everything. So if you someone who plays docked on TV, there's not really much to be excited about. But if you play in handheld, say you bought a Switch Lite, and you're like, oh man, I want a better handheld experience. Well, people say it's like night and day. There's even some journalists, I think they're being a bit exaggerating, although I understand because going from LCD to OLED is a massive quality jump. Some are being like it's almost like you're playing these games in a new, in a higher resolution. Some are saying it's like it's not really that. It's the colors are pop a lot more. It's a lot crisper. The blacks are actually black. Text is easier to read on OLED. There's a lot of good things with OLED, and Nintendo even recently addressed the only concern that people have is burn-in, which that's always a concern with OLED. It's also a concern that's been addressed over the last 10 years that OLED's been growing in popularity. So for the most part, I don't think you have to worry about it. Your Switch is going to die in handheld before you would ever get to the point of burning in an image. Unless for some reason, every time you turn it on, you just leave it on the home menu for 3 hours till it dies, plug it in, charge it, and do that all over. I mean, if you're trying to make it burn in, basically, you can make it burn in at max brightness. But that's something to really worry about. Obviously, they've all praised the kickstand, as they should. It's using a Surface-style kickstand, which is, in my opinion, one of the best kickstands in the industry. Very solid. Why they didn't do this from the first place, I don't know. I don't know why they thought that little pop-out thing was going to work. In fact, I think my Switch doesn't even have its kickstand on it anymore. I got to find it for the comparison video because I don't even know what the hell happened to it. Kids, you know. So yeah, there's that. And one thing I am curious about, of course, is when you take apart the Switch OLED, because when I get it, the first thing I'm going to do, well, turn it on, make sure it works. Then I'm going to open it up because I want to see, while the internals are the same chipset, did they change the cooling solution? Did they reorganize things inside of it? Because I'm sure they did. Based on the fact they moved the SD card reader and they moved how the cooling works a little bit, even though you can use the Switch OLED in any Switch dock, technically how it gets its air is a little bit different. It's not in the same air vent spots. It more like sucks it in from the bottom and spits it out at the top. And I'm curious if that's going to cause any overheating issues in the old docks if you use it in there, even though they said it's compatible. And you can use, obviously, your current Switches in the new dock, which basically the only reason to get the new dock, besides it coming with your Switch OLED if you want to buy it on your own, is the LAN port. And the LAN port is a big deal, in so much that it doesn't run at USB 2.0 speeds. As long as it runs at standard LAN 1 gig speeds, that's like a bare minimum standard on even like the cheapest of motherboards you can buy out there. 1 gig networking with a LAN port. Pretty basic. If it is that, and it's not running through a USB 2.0 controller port, you are factually going to have a better internet connection on your Switch right now than you will with any dongle you have ever attached. So you're like, oh, I don't need it. I already have a dongle. Your dongle is limited. Very limited, because the current Switch dock only has USB 2.0, which is well below what most people's cable internet lines are running. So you are not getting the full capabilities of your internet, even wired, on your Switch. So this does have the potential, if there's a high enough adoption rate, to maybe affect better online play. I'm especially looking forward to things like Splatoon 3 and how many people might own Switch OLED then, and then see better connections then for that game, less disconnects and all that. Anyways, what I want to do right now while I do this shot quick is, Paul, what are your thoughts on the Switch OLED? Are you even excited about it? Do you want to get one? Because I run a YouTube channel, I kind of have to. But is it something you're even interested in, or are you just kind of like, you know what, I have a Switch, I'm good?
If it wasn't for being a hardcore Nintendo gamer that just has to buy everything, and I was just being honest with myself as a normal gamer, happy going about various parts of the industry, having a Nintendo Switch would probably be enough. I did a reaction video to it, in fact, when it first dropped on Nintendo's YouTube page, and I was stoked, I was blown away, I was watching it, excited, and I said to myself out loud, and of course it's going to be more powerful too, right? We're going to have to find out more later. And then of course the information came out that it's not, and I got this feeling of, ooh, am I not in need of this? I'm still going to buy it because I have to get every new Nintendo toy. I mean, I'm wearing a custom Nintendo Switch t-shirt, I've got a Samus statue here. That's the kind of gamer I am, and the Zelda shirt there. But it's unfortunately not the must-have that I think a lot of us were hoping it would be. It's not the Nintendo Switch Plus, the Pro. I play about 50-50 on TV and in handheld mode. If this had a little bit of an upgrade in terms of resolution or some processing power, even like new 3DS levels of improvement for the TV purposes, I would be all aboard it and telling people, like, you should probably get it. It's going to enhance your experience. It's going to enhance mine 100% of the time. But without that, it's only going to enhance the clarity visually only while playing in portable, which is half my time. Not a necessary get. For most people, it won't. For anyone who's getting into the Nintendo Switch market, I think this is the system to get. It'll be interesting to see how many people upgrade or maybe trade in, Yeah. I think you share a similar feeling, right? Not a must-have, but still gonna get it.
Well, so obviously I was always going to get it just because of this YouTube channel.
Right.
And to be honest, let's see if I can grab my Switch with my foot right here. I have it. I don't know. This was an E3 setup thing. My dock is underneath. Oh my gosh. So the thing is, on my Switch right now, I don't know how well it shows up. I need new Joy-Cons. The pads got ripped off by my kids on the sticks. There's no drift or anything, and I've tried putting them back on, and I don't know why it's so difficult to put them on. It just is. And I've tried like third-party replacement pads. Doesn't work. Now I could just buy new thumbsticks and install them. That's not a big deal to me, and that would be a much cheaper solution than buying new Joy-Con. But I want a system that hasn't, I want something that hasn't been touched by my kids. That's the bottom line. I want something that's just for me. That every time I touch it, I don't got to worry about the fingerprints all over it. I don't have to worry about, oh man, why is one of my Joy-Con missing? Why is my kickstand gone? Where did my memory card go? Hey, that game I was playing, why is it not in my Switch? And you could say maybe that's a failure on my parenting side. I don't know about that. If you have children, you just know they find a way to get into all your stuff. There's no such thing as this is mommy and daddy's stuff and this is your stuff. It just doesn't matter. If they want to get it, they will find a way. But I don't think they're going to care about the Switch OLED. My children, I have a 5-year-old who's almost 6, turns 6 at the end of this month, 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. I don't think any of them are going to care about Switch OLED. I don't think Switch OLED's the kind of platform that I need to worry about as a parent that my kids are going to play. Because I don't think they're going to care about having a brighter screen, a more vibrant screen. They're not going to care about any of that stuff. They're kids. They just want to play. My son has a Switch Lite. My daughter has a normal Switch. My youngest son doesn't have anything. Maybe he'll end up getting this to play. I have no idea. But it's just kind of I want to get a new Switch that my kids haven't touched and something that I'm going to appreciate more. Because where I play a majority of my gaming time, if I'm not streaming or recording, I don't sit in my basement on my gaming TV and play games that much because unless I'm streaming, I got kids to watch. I got other things going on. So I'm usually playing my Switch while my kids are playing outside, riding their bikes. I'll sit out there, on the porch and play. Or if what happens more often than not is I'll put a show on and I'll lay in bed and I'll casually be playing a game on my Switch while I'm laying in bed watching a show on TV. Like that's how I primarily play my Switch. And then yeah, I do appreciate docked TV mode, absolutely. Especially Skyward Sword. I have yet to use button controls in Skyward Sword because I love the motion controls so much back in the day. I'm like got this mindset that I refuse to play it with button controls. Then I keep telling myself every night I'm in bed, just put Skyward Sword in and try it with the button controls. Just do it. And you love motion, it's fine. Just do it. And I haven't done it yet. So to me, getting the Switch OLED is just more so. It's the best version of Switch, factually, just as an all-around platform. But it's also that I want a Switch that's for me, and I feel like this gives me an extra Switch, so all 3 of my kids can have a Switch, and then I'll have my own. And I think if that's the case, they'll leave my Switch alone. Even though I have more games than them, so God knows they still won't leave it alone. But I share my games with them, guys, but some of them are digital, and my account isn't on all of their Switches, and there's the whole trying to keep them off YouTube thing, so then I don't really want to set up the internet, and then there's a whole bunch of parenting snafu with all that. And yeah, parental controls are nice, but Nintendo's parental controls are fine. They're a little bit limiting, if I'm going to be honest. I feel like that on all the platforms, though, by the way, whether it's Sony, PlayStation, or like pretty much everything that's not like an Android or Apple device has very limited parenting controls. I don't know why. You'll be on the Nintendo Switch Online app and be like, oh, my kids played too long, let me kick them off, and you hit the button and they're still not kicked off. It just shuts off on their end and then they just turn it back on and they keep playing. So like it doesn't do anything. Like what's the point? So
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, Switch OLED is a platform that, if it didn't exist, I wouldn't be like upset. It's not like I feel like I need a Switch OLED. Really, the primary reason I'm getting it is when I do online Splatoon 3, I want the LAN port. And if I want that and I need new Joy-Cons, you start adding up that Nintendo's selling the extra dock on its own for, $100. Joy-Cons are $60, $70. I'm already like $200 deep with taxes just to get the stuff I want. So why not just get the new Switch to go along with it for the extra $150? And bare minimum, I could always end up just trading this in and getting some money back anyways to put towards games. And to be fair to people, I think a lot of people this holiday are looking at it as a potential upgrade for a trade-in proposition. The trade-in value for this platform isn't going to go down this holiday. It's still going to end up selling out. I think all versions of Switch are going to sell out over November, December. And that's going to lead to high demand for used platforms. So you still should be able to get some decent trade value. Pay attention, by the way, to GameStop, folks. They tend to have a lot of really cool trading deals around the time new platforms are coming out, where you can get like an extra $100 at times for trading into the platform, because they know that they could take this, clean it up, turn it around, sell it for $275, and they paid you $200, and it's like, I mean, that's not that bad of a deal. When you're looking at secondhand market on like Facebook and stuff, like, you'll see, hey, that's what people are selling these for, like $200. Well, you can get that and get your bonus points and your gold points and enjoy some benefits there. I always say, I understand people don't want to shop at GameStop. I'm not like trying to promote them. It's more so I'm a smart consumer. I take advantage of every trade-in promotion and point value thing. As an example, every digital purchase I make on my Switch, I make it through GameStop, because you don't get discounts unless it's already on sale on here. So if you're going to spend full price, if you buy the digital code from them, you get your gold points and you get your gold coins on here. You get both. You get the double dip. So then you end up getting discount codes and all that. Yes, folks, I might be someone that looks like I own a bunch of shit, but I do this because I save money everywhere I can. Switch OLED. I am excited in so much that I'm very curious to see if I end up carrying. I don't know how much I'm going to end up carrying. I think I'm going to enjoy, oh my God, it looks beautiful. And I don't have an OLED TV in my house right now, so I don't even know what to expect. Technically, I think my iPhone 12 has an OLED screen, but because I have it on blue light saving mode all the time, I don't have the true colors anyways. It's always dulled out to me. I guess I could turn that off and see what an OLED panel can do. All I know is it's not what I wanted. It's what we're getting. And I don't know that Nintendo's done yet. They had like 6 different 3DS models. So this will be the 3rd different. Well, I guess you could say 4th different if you count the version 2 Switch. I mean, they did change the box color, so I guess we got to count it as 4 different versions of Switch. I don't think they're done, but like, we're mega Nintendo fans, right? So Switch OLED's like, okay, yeah, we'll get it just for being fans, or I run this YouTube channel, so why not? Plus, I haven't, a kid that doesn't have a Switch, so it just kind of works out. But I always go, that's us. But to the average consumer, do we really think they should care about this thing? It costs $50 more. I'm not so sure that basically having a better kickstand, a LAN port that should have been there day one, and a bigger, brighter, more color accurate screen, like, that's a $50 upgrade. It feels weird. It feels more like this is like just the new Switch. Why didn't they just replace this at $300? Say we're done with this and we're just making the OLED model, and that's going to be our new standard model, which is what I think Nintendo's going to be doing in a year. I think they're going to discontinue this, and that's going to be the new model, and they're going to price cut it, I hope. But I mean, expecting Nintendo to price cut anything when it keeps selling out. I know a lot of people think this should be price cut already, and it's like the #1 unit seller in the world. They ain't price cutting shit right now.
Their profit margins have got to be good, because 4.5 years in, Nintendo Switch still selling for that $300 MSRP. I do think that since the market isn't fully reached yet in terms of how many Nintendo Switches are out there, we know that if you want to call it a semi-handheld system, we know that a handheld system can go up to 155 million thanks to DS. So if you look at Nintendo Switch's 89 million or so, there's still room for another 60 million people out there to potentially get it. If you're looking at it from a console perspective, you look at PS2, that a console dedicated could go up to 157 million PS2 era. How much can Nintendo Switch go? The OLED will sell just fine. Is it for everyone? No, but if this was coming out at the tail end of Nintendo Switch's life and the system was already at 140, it might not serve that much of a purpose, because everyone's got it. Too much penetration in the market. But there's so much room to grow that I think, like you said, the system will sell well, and eventually components will change, and it'll be dropped to 300, and maybe a light dropped to 160, 170, and maybe a plus eventually.
Yeah, like when do you think they're going to do price drops? Because they're not going to do it now. The thing's selling out at a lot of places now, so not going to happen this year. Next year, if you just look at the lineup of games, that alone should keep the thing selling like gangbusters. So I'm like, I keep looking to the future, like when does a price cut make sense? For us consumers, hey, next year's 5 years in, we should be price cut. No, because it's selling out. And companies don't price cut things that are selling out.
It's
So
such
when do you think a price cut might come for any of these platforms?
it's such a strong system that Nintendo doesn't need to, but a smart Nintendo is one that is almost struggling to come back into first place, and that's when they're making the best moves, I think. And right now, I think they need to keep that momentum high, stay high in people's minds. Don't lose it while they're at the top, you know?
Do you think
Um,
that's why they're
I,
releasing the Switch OLED at all? Is
I
them
think
just
it's
trying to add to the momentum?
yes, I think, Wii, for as well as it did, to date, Nintendo's best-selling dedicated home console, sold 101 million units in its lifetime. But if you look at it, like 86 million were in those first 4 years until November 2010, and then from November 10 until Wii U came out in November 2012, that's when it made its last 16 million. Really hot success, and then it fell kind of steep. Nintendo Switch is at like 89 million now in less time, and now we have other systems on the market. PS5 is hot, Xbox Series X is hot. I don't think Nintendo wants to lose market talk. They need to be the newest toy on the market, but without necessarily releasing the big next gen console yet. So this is just something to, I think, be in discussion that come this holiday, oh, you want the
Nintendo's got
newest
something
toy?
new too.
They got a new toy too. So to answer that first question, when do they do a price drop? Maybe when PS5 and Xbox Series S and X are more available, chip shortages aren't an issue anymore. Nintendo Switch is starting to lose a little bit of steam. Maybe November 2022, maybe like, 5.5 years in, they finally drop the price. And then at that point, though, do they have three models on the market with three different prices? That's kind of weird. I think two sounds more. Here, my ideal would be Nintendo Switch OLED drops to 300, Nintendo Switch Plus comes out at 400, and that's a beefy, might as well be called a next gen platform. And then you've got the Lite, and you have three models: a 200, a 300, and a 400 that exist. Very different reasons, very different price points. Uh, but at that point, does a Plus just become Nintendo Switch 2? Depending on how much power it has, the later it comes out in the life, I think the more likely it's to become a proper sequel. If it comes out next year, does that warrant it just being called a Plus, a Pro, and U? That's hard to say.
Oh yeah,
Don't
definitely.
lose it now, Nintendo. Though
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's my hope. Is like, keep the momentum strong.
Well, in Shintaro Furukawa's actually talked about this during some of the investors meetings where he's mentioned like he's been at Nintendo, a long time, a couple decades, and he has always been on the financial side of things. And he says, one issue Nintendo has always had is that we find success and then we just fall off a cliff, and we are like scrambling to try to find that success again, and it always takes us a while before we can find it again. And it's not just even like Wii, and then we'll see what happened with Wii U, then Switch, or DS, and then you see, okay, followed up by 3DS, which technically, it feels weird saying this. Oh, the thing sold 75 plus million. That's their worst selling handheld of all time. They've never
Yeah.
had one sell under like 84 million or something like that. So like their handhelds have always been close to 100 million or better until the 3DS happened. And then obviously home console wise, they've never had anything sell like under 20 million. And then obviously Wii U just flopped really hard. But the thing is with their home consoles is it like that's a more recent generations. All the way back, the NES sold like gangbusters, and then the SNES sold like 20 million less. The N64 sold 20 million less, and it just kept going down and down and down, and they never could get that NES, mass market appeal again until they changed things up and did the Wii. So he's been here through all this, and he I don't even know what notification that is, but thank you for whatever that is. It's a new sponsor. Thank you so much. So yeah, we've been through all of that, and he just said, hey, one of my goals as president is to prevent we plateau and then fall off the cliff. It's like, I don't want that to happen. And this is where I've thrown out the strategies all the way back to 2017, where, well, how do other tech companies avoid that? Microsoft has not avoided that at all. They've been up and down like crazy with their systems, just trying to grab a foothold, and now they've completely changed their focus. Yeah, the series systems are doing well, but that doesn't really matter to them. What matters to them is that Game Pass subscriptions and all that are on the rise, because they view the subscription services and streaming as the future, and they're going all in on that. And kudos to them, because hey, we haven't seen a major platform holder do that yet. Sony's not doing it. Nintendo's not doing it. Congratulations. Microsoft's going all in. Sony has their toes in the water for it. We'll see what they do in the future. And obviously, we've seen Sony have their own way of maintaining success. Every single Sony platform but PlayStation 3 has sold over 100 million units. Every single time. And it's going to happen again with PlayStation 5. It's well on its way to doing that here, probably in the first 4 or 5 years on the market. It's going to be doing Switch numbers and hitting 100 million. So I was like, well, how do they do that? Well, one, Sony has a very weird strategy at the beginning of every generation. For some reason, we just accept it as consumers and gamers, where they show you a bunch of games that you're not going to get for like 3 or 4 years. And that makes people buy their systems now, knowing that, we are going to get like Horizon Forbidden West. They showed it off last year. It's supposed to be a big 2021 game. Now it's coming out next year, unless it gets delayed again and comes out in 2023. Like, they always promise a bunch of games, and then you're going to get those games, but not for a while. They always start off by promising. But why they get away with that promise and then having a couple years there where they kind of don't have much, where Nintendo usually slams you at the beginning and then dies off, is that Sony ends all their generations very strong, right? They ended, PlayStation 3 with some of the best PlayStation 3 games in that final year, leading literally up until like weeks before PlayStation 4 came out. They had some of their biggest games come out. I mean, Last of Us came out in that final year. Like, they had major games come out that they were then able to remaster and repackage and resell, like everybody does. But even PlayStation 4 had some of its best games, Ghost of Tsushima and all that, coming out in the final year of PlayStation 4, leading into PlayStation 5. And that's how they've always maintained momentum is, okay, yeah, when you buy that new platform, it might be a couple of years before you finally get that big system seller game. But you're going to get them. And you're going to get them because look what you just got on the prior platform. And that's how they maintain their momentum, is they found that ending strong is more important than starting strong. And for Nintendo over the years, it's always been starting strong is important. Ending strong isn't. Except every time they don't end strong, they don't recover. They literally, last 2 years, you said they only sold 16 million Wiis in the last 2 years of Wii. They also had like no games come out that matter. They had some games they finally ported over from Japan that fans had to make a damn petition to even get over. And then they got Skyward Sword. And then Skyward Sword came after Wii U was announced. So it was like, what are you doing? Like, this is just baffling to me. So like, they just let the Wii die and then thought, oh, we're going to pick it right back up with Wii U and New Super Mario Bros. U. And it's like, no, dude, you shouldn't have let Wii die like that. That was not. And they've done this before, like GameCube. They let GameCube die out. They let, God, I remember the end of the SNES era. The things were just really thin pickings from Nintendo. And I'm like, why are they like always, we have you at the beginning and be hyped, and after a couple years, we just don't care anymore. We pack it up and we're ready for the next. It's almost like Nintendo, because they were split between two platforms, just couldn't maintain game volume to keep it going to the end. And I think one thing we're noticing with Switch, and this is great news for the longevity of the platform, or even if a more powerful Nintendo hardware is coming eventually. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's coming eventually. Well, what helps that be exciting is right now, all their development is focused on a single platform, right? They don't have a separate handheld anymore. 3DS is out of commission. They're done making that. They don't have a separate home console. This is it. It's Switch. And because of that, we're seeing some of potentially the best games on the platform come out in year 5. And when's the last time we could say that about a Nintendo platform? Oh, year 5 is going to be, when you get the big brand new exclusive Zelda game coming out. Oh, and by the way, it actually matters because that same year we have a big brand new Splatoon game coming out. We have a big brand new, Mario plus Rabbids game coming out. We have the first ever open world Pokemon game coming out. All of that in year 5. Like, okay, yeah, we've had Zelda games come out late. We just talked about Skyward Sword, but we haven't had it combined with this level of support out of Nintendo and their partners. It definitely feels like maybe an advantage I think Sony's had this whole time, where they were kind of lucky that Vita and PSP sort of petered out for them. Even though I know PSP ended up selling really, really well, guys. I'm well aware of how well it sold. I know Vita was really big in Japan. I'm not knocking the platforms. I don't think Sony ever fully put their full force of development into those platforms, and I think that's largely why they ended up going away. PSP, I know people can put it, look at 80 million. I know PSP sold a lot, but go ahead and ask how many people that still rock PSPs, why they rock their PSPs. And you'll quickly find out there's a whole underbelly market that is the real reason PSP was doing so well. Not necessarily game sales. Go look at the top selling games of all time on PSP and then look at how many PSPs sold. And you tell me it makes any sense. Legally, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the ratio on that system is off. Definitely,
it's pretty bad, but it still sold well, and there's a very good reason that it sold
very well.
Something that the Steam Deck, by the way, is going to have a great field day in that kind of market.
That's another interesting one, and Steam Deck, I think, might throw not a big wrench, but a little wrench into potentially Nintendo's plans of, well, when do you do a price drop? Not enough Steam Decks are going to be available, I think, to penetrate the market and sell, 10 million in the first few months, because they're just not going to have that many made. If you try to pre-order it now, you're not going to get one until 2022. So competing neck and neck with Nintendo isn't going to be there. But if Nintendo starts seeing a switch, they could drop a price drop easily at any time they want and still make a good profit. But I definitely think, like what you said is true. Going into the 5th year, Nintendo, this is looking like the most healthy console of theirs in years, combining hardware and software divisions into one, handheld and portable and, home console into one. Also, if you think about it, HD development, even when HD was considered, 720p, right? Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. All third-party companies, including Microsoft and Sony, started HD development for those systems like in 2004 or 5, or the systems coming out in 5 and 6. And then from 2005 and 6 onwards until their next platforms, were developing HD games for years. Nintendo, despite being old school and having a mastery of video game development, they struggled with Wii U because, talented as they were now developing games for an HD platform for the first time. As long as anyone has been making games. But that extra work, the extra detail that has to go into HD development, Wii U didn't have a lot of hits one after another. And when the console came out, how long did it take to get Pikmin 3? 8 months later? Nintendo now understands HD development. They're able to put in more time and resources, and Nintendo Switch games are coming out a lot more steadily than they did in the Wii U era. And then you've got ports that fill in the gaps. So they have a really nice, attractive amount of games and a healthy 2022 with a lot of hits. And they could dig from any franchise, I feel like now. Throw in Punch-Out. Punch-Out's going to be the best-selling Punch-Out on Nintendo Switch. Pick Kid Icarus, it's going to be the best-selling pit game on Nintendo Switch. Now's the time to reinvigorate any old franchise, I think. And
Pikmin 4, come on.
As long as it's good, everything. I know you've talked about it on the channel before, but Animal Crossing, Smash Bros., 3D Zelda, 3D Mario, each entry of Nintendo's, it's doing the best now.
Yeah, I mean, even like the
more.
Kirby team, they've talked about how like the next Kirby game they're making is supposed to be the best Kirby game of all time. And I don't know whether it will be, but I kind of hope it's ambitious because like now's the time. Like Kirby's been relevant forever. They release one every year. But now it's like, okay, yeah, let's put some effort in it. Like Pokemon Legends let's see what these teams can do on a platform that people are just buying games like crazy. I mean, Luigi's Mansion 3 is basically a 10 million seller. Okay, let's get another Luigi's Mansion game out. Pikmin 3 Deluxe is now, by the way, a port is now the best-selling Pikmin game of all time. All right, let's get Pikmin 4 out the door. Like, let's get the, like, you know, oh, Star Fox Zero. Oh, yeah, that was a nice little peter out for the end of Wii U. How about let's get a new Star Fox game right now? Like,
Yes.
like now's the time. Things are selling. Like, you know, we have Metroid Dread coming up, and we haven't seen a side-scrolling Metroid game top 2 million in sales. Basically, only ever happened one time in the history of Metroid. Once. Okay? And we've only ever had sales top to 4 million one time, and that was side-scrolling. That was Metroid Prime. So, hey, Metroid Dread might sell 5 million units, and that's insane for Metroid. It has that potential that people on Switch are just buying games like crazy. They just want stuff to play, and it doesn't matter how hard or how fast it comes, they're gonna buy it. Like Mario Golf, from last I heard, is like the fastest selling Mario Golf game to date, and we're probably about to get that confirmed with Nintendo's financials. You know, the same thing happened with Mario Tennis, Super Mario Party, Pokemon. You know, it's seen the Pokemon Sword and Shield had the best sales in Pokemon pretty much since Generation 1. Like, that's insane, and that's all happening on this platform. And Nintendo's continuing to give support. And I know it's been a bit lean. I know during this COVID thing, first party wise, it's been a bit lean. All right. I get it, guys. All right. Like even this month, the big game's a third party game, No More Heroes 3. Great game. Probably going to be fantastic. But again, Nintendo didn't make that. So it's been a bit lean. I mean, even when you look at, oh, Mario Golf. Yeah, but Nintendo technically didn't make Mario Golf either. That was made by Camelot. Oh, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Again, Nintendo didn't make that game. The only last game they really released that they worked on themselves was Bowser's Fury mode and Super Mario 3D World. Like, Nintendo themselves hasn't really released anything that they have personally worked on this year that's new yet. Metroid Dread is one of those, although then again it sounds like they hired a different company and then they worked with that company. So it's another one of those that's not really full. Like, what the hell are Nintendo's teams doing? Well, clearly Splatoon 3, clearly Breath of the Wild 2. We know for sure those two games are made internally at Nintendo. We know Metroid Prime 4 is made internally at Retro Studios. Whenever the hell that game's coming. So, like, the thing is, Nintendo has been kind of skating during the pandemic, and it doesn't matter because all that's allowed them to do is give their dev teams all this extra time, and that means 2022 and 2023 should have a lot of really big games, which then leads you to go, okay, so then Switch OLED's coming out because they obviously were working on this before the pandemic. Okay, that's coming, but like, what's the point? Well, to keep Switch relevant in the hardware marketplace, so their most recent hardware release isn't 2 years ago. And then, obviously, if they look at their momentum and their roadmap and they go, look, we're going to have big games next couple of years, you know, what do they do with the hardware then? And I think we'll get into this in a moment because you mentioned, hey, at some point, you just call it a new Switch or a new Switch 2. And I mentioned in 2017 this idea that Nintendo might do away with generations. And just go, which by the way, generations are usually fan and media made anyways, but they might do away with the concept of this is their next platform. I'm more like, no, this is the same platform. This is the same Switch family. It's just our latest Switch. It's all backwards compatible. And they slowly over time phase out the old hardware for the new hardware. Just like I think is going to happen with Switch OLED. I think this Switch, if you own one of these current normal base Switches, just like the version 1 one was phased out for version 2, I think this model of Switch is going to get phased out for Switch OLED in the next year. Because there's no reason for Nintendo to make two platforms that are basically exactly the same, but one has a better screen. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Get rid of one. The only reason they're not is because what Nintendo didn't plan when Switch OLED... I guarantee, guys, Switch OLED was planned to be just a straight-up replacement. But then the pandemic happened, and this sold out. And they're going, we can't just tell people we're replacing this when we can't get enough of these on store shelves as it is. That doesn't make sense. So instead, we're going to give you both. And one's going to be $50 more. And then a year from now, when they price drop it, and we're all like, what the hell? Nintendo's going to go, oh, that's all right, don't worry about it. You already bought it. Early adapter. You know, we'll give you a free NES game or something. Have a good day. The old 3DS program. When they price drop that really quick. That was not a planned price drop, though, to be clear. Nintendo wasn't planning on... Oh, did you see the Q&A Reggie did yesterday?
Reggie's comment on the 3DS and the price?
Yeah. He's basically like, it's my fault. I overpriced it. I told him the price is too high.
despite that thing coming out for $250 when they did the ambassador program,
Hmm.
they dropped it officially to 170, giving people 20 games, NES, SNES split. That was a pretty respectable thing to do, I think, which
It was,
softened the
yeah, they
blow.
didn't have to, but it
The
was
blow
kind of
blow.
one of those like everyone knows why your price cut. You can't sell the damn
Right,
thing,
right.
and you don't really have many games on it. So like, but it was a
Yeah.
cool thing they did with the ambassadors program. Um, okay, so I get into our next topic here. Skyward Sword HD, obviously 10-year anniversary. Um, came out back on the Wii. We talked about it briefly how it was just bad timing. It didn't sell very well. Obviously, controversial motion controls. Have you had a chance to play Skyward Sword HD since it came out?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
picked it up, I pre-ordered it, and it's great. Like so far, my impressions of it are really solid. I have two kids myself, 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I still have my Wii U hooked up with my old Wii save data on it, but it's a night and day difference playing on, a TV that is an HD TV that fully utilizes the 1080p visual, 60 frames per second of Skyward Sword. Um, some of that art style is a little bit lost because it was supposed to be, not
It,
to say
it was
blurry, but
built for
that
being blurry. Yeah, yeah.
it was built to be blurry. Like you look at scan lines in old arcade cabinets. They were meant to be there on purpose so that it filled in pixels and stuff like that. So I think it's really good, and the early sales that we got out of it, out of Japan at least, are pretty solid. 170,000 first week, having your typical 70% drop for second week, not knowing digital, but knowing Europe's doing well. Like I don't want to say it's probably over the 3.5 million that sold on Wii, but I'm confident it's definitely going to lifetime surpass Wii's 3.5. But uh, smart on Nintendo for releasing it. I like the motion controls, like you know said, but I'm also a fan of playing it with traditional. I think it's a good move that they did both. Um, I hope it does well because
Have you had any problems with the
oh, yeah.
motion controls? Because I was watching because Beat 'em Ups did a video on his impressions on the game, and he ended up really loving the button controls, but he used to like the original motion controls, and he thinks the motion controls are like 10 times worse in the Switch version than in the original. And I found that interesting because my opinion's like the polar opposite. I'm not having like any problems.
I think it's
So
improved.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I
Yeah,
don't know. Have you had any issues with them?
no problems with me. I think they're smooth and just as responsive as before, if not better. And I was hoping they'd be better because Joy-Cons is more advanced tech than Wii Motion Plus, but no, it's good for me.
Well, I
I
think
haven't, you know,
so. I have a theory on this because I was watching his video and he was doing it on live stream and he was doing these big sweeping motions and all that. Which, by the way, that's how Nintendo has advertised Skyward Sword from the very beginning. Do these big sweeping, deliberate motions, and that's not how I play. I don't find that comfortable. I don't know why I'd want to sit in the couch and potentially swing my arm and hit my kids. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't play video games for that. If I want to work out, I'll put in Ring Fit Adventure. I don't need to be swinging my arms like that. And obviously, it gets tiring. And Zelda games are a game you usually pop in and play for at least an hour or two. You're not just going to play for 5 minutes. So, to me, all of my motion, even back to the original game, was always just little wrist flicks. No big
it's,
deal. And once you realize, oh, the cursor's centered on whatever direction your thing is pointed, well, you can literally have the thing like this on the side, pointed at the ground. As long as you recognize that where you're pointing is the center of the screen, I got no problems, man. It all works just fine. And I was wondering if the controls work that way, and that's probably the intended way, and probably the way most of the testers were using it. But because it looks cool in commercials to be doing all these big sweeping motions, that actually when you do that, it throws off the gyroscope, and that's why people are having problems when they try to play it the way Nintendo tells them to play it. Even the tutorials, go like this. I'm like, no, just go like this. Go like that. You don't have to swing your arm. And I think that's throwing it off. Because if you think about it, when you do the wrist flick, right? Like, okay, you're doing like a little side strut. You're just going like this, right? It's super quick. But when you got to do this exaggerated up and then down, well, you're moving the sword, and the game might register you as moving it in a different direction before you bring it back down. And I'm like, I think Nintendo's just advertising this game wrong. And I think the tutorial's advertising it wrong because I've never played the game that way, and thus I've never had issues. But everyone I watch, even like my kids, try to do these exaggerated sword motions, and it doesn't work 1-to-1. And I'm like, I don't know what the problem. Look. Here it is. Here's this. Like, it's all working fine. What's you got? Oh, right. Well, Dad, you're not doing this and this. I'm like, well, because it looks dumb when you do that, and it's clearly not working. So don't do that.
I will say on the, I don't want to get into a spoiler territory, so I won't say who's the last boss, but the last boss on the Wii version when I played, I did that. I was all pumped up. I got into the middle of my room, and I was swinging big, and it worked to some extent, but for that boss, something about it, I had to get up off the couch, and that was just fun.
Yeah, I got off the couch in the original too. Yeah, and there's like a thing you got to do with your shield during it that I basically hadn't been doing the entire time I played the game. You had a parry or whatever, and I hadn't been doing that the entire game. So like the final boss kicked my ass like 4 times before I'm like, all right, let me actually get good at parrying. It's kind of like in Breath of the Wild, oh yeah, I could take out a guardian, but I'd always cheese them and just use like the ancient arrows, and it's like, yeah, but from the very beginning, you could just deflect with your shield and take them out. I'm like, I don't want to learn how to get good. I want to take the easy. So and that boss forces you, if you haven't used that move all game, because yeah, there's some enemies it's useful for, but you don't really need it. There's other ways to beat those enemies. So it's kind of like, all right, kicked my butt. I was off the couch. I didn't do the exaggerated sword motions, but I was sweating. That's the closest in my life I have come to throwing my Wiimote at the TV. Never happened. I've never let go of it and hit the TV in my life, but that was the closest. And I used to get really into Wii Sports, man. I'd be going nuts, but I was never sweating. I was sweating playing Demise, especially when you're on your 3rd attempt. You just kicked your ass. You almost beat them the 2nd time, and you're like, come on. But it's a fun game. I will say this. I'm really glad that Skyward Sword's getting a second run. I know there's a lot of debate over whether it's worth $60 or not. I think that's all in the eye of the beholder. Me, who's played the original, I don't know. I mean, I bought it. I'm also a big Zelda guy. Like, I'm gonna buy anything. They could charge me $100, and I probably still would have bought it. So I'm not a very good barometer on value for Zelda games. But I will say, I think Skyward Sword is criminally underrated. I think a lot of people didn't play it because they didn't like the motion controls. Now you have a chance to do it without motion controls. And yes, it does take some getting used to with button controls. The hardest thing to get used to is the camera, having to hold the L button and then move the right stick, because the right stick also controls the sword. It's a bit clunky. Or you could just pretend the game doesn't have a free roam camera and just center your thing by hitting ZL like the game originally was in the first place. I mean, to be honest, I grew up playing games that way, so not that big of a deal for me to do that. But I know modern games are all free roam camera, so it's there. Maybe not the best. I think it would have been better if they would have made the sword strikes where you hold L instead, or gave you the option to flip that in the control options.
I think so.
Because it does look a little funny running around and like Link's like holding the sword out here, and you're like, okay, like that's just weird. Like, have him sheath it and only pull it out when I hit the L button, and then. But they didn't do that. It is what it is. I think the game's really good. I think it's aged really well. Obviously, it's if you guys your first Zelda experience ever is Breath of the Wild, this is a huge shock to the system because this is nothing like that game. Yeah, there's a stamina meter and there's some item upgrades, but it's not open world at all. It's like the most linear Zelda game there's ever been. You have to do it in order. You have to go certain directions. There's pretty much like one way to do everything. This isn't Breath of the Wild where there's a billion ways. It's one way. Do it the way the game wants you to. Sure, eventually you can go and revisit places and gather supplies and do side quests, but at the end of the day, it's not open world. And it's also, Breath of the Wild is built on the thrill of discovery and exploration, and that's kind of the opposite of this. This game is linear and built heavily on story. Story. I mean, there's over 5 hours of cutscenes in this game, guys. 5 hours. If there was ever one thing I wanted them to do, it was voice act those cutscenes. in this game. That would have been so nice because this game has so many of them. I mean, there's one cutscene that goes like 18 minutes long. It's insane. Like they have so many cutscenes because this game is the beginning of the Zelda storyline. It's the beginning of everything. And it just has really in-depth, certain characters anyways have really in-depth development. Groose. If you guys haven't played this game and don't know anything about Groose, you're going to love Groose by the end, man. You're gonna start calling Hyrule Grooseland pretty soon. So, like I think the game's going over well. Even my youngest son, who loves Breath of the Wild, I think it's his favorite game. He's getting into it a little bit. He doesn't like that the combat feels more complicated to him because it's not a button press. But I mean that was always the caveat with this game is it's not that it's difficult, it's that it's different. Even the button controls, it's different. It's not your normal Zelda game, and it takes some getting used to. But if you're willing to get used to it, there's a lot of good stuff in this game. And to me, and the reason why I've been so adamant of not getting off motion controls while playing it again is I love motion controls in this particular game, even though they're not perfect, because I wanted this to be the future of Zelda. I wanted Zelda to be motion controls moving forward, which I know most people don't agree with that opinion, but I think motion controls take some skill. And when I watch people failing with their motion controls, well, I don't have any problems, I kind of have like that cocky voice in my head saying, get good. Just get good. I mean, maybe something's wrong with your Joy-Cons, but get good. I like I don't know what to tell you. Like I don't have any of these problems. Get good. But it does feel like it's not hard, but it's also, hey, when you're fighting the Bokoblin with the electric swords and they electrocute you and you kill yourself, and it's like, well, get good. I don't even have those. Like it's not even a problem for me. I don't have any missed swings with my sword to have that happen. But I mean, I always thought the same thing was true with Zelda 2. Because Zelda 2 ranks really high for me, The Adventure of Link. I don't actually find the combat in that game difficult. You can pretty much cheese everything. There's an easy way to do everything. I mean, God, Dark Link, just go crouch in the damn corner and swing away. He can't hit you, so you're going to eventually kill him. But what I liked about the combat in the game that made it feel difficult is that, yeah, you had to think about what you were doing. You couldn't just button mash. You had to decide there were multiple ways to swing your sword. From a stab, to a swipe, to a downward thrust, to a jump attack. Like, there's all these different ways to attack that just, in prior Zelda games, just swing your sword. You swing, and you have a spin attack, and that was it in Zelda 1. And this, and you can shoot lasers, of course. In this game, there's magic abilities, and also, like, there's a certain skill level to the combat. And that's what I felt like Skyward Sword has, even to this day. There's some skill to that combat. Now, not saying combat like in Breath of the Wild doesn't have skill. Clearly there is. It's just a different type of skill. Where one is about precise movements, the other one is more, I don't know, I guess timing based. I think a lot of the Breath of the Wild skill, like when you're facing off against a golden Lionel or something, it's mostly just timing. If you can get the timing right, you'll be fine. Where this is not just timing, it's direction and all that. There's other things at play. Also, maybe making sure that you centered your controls so you don't swing the wrong way. I mean, some people don't do that. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Skyward Sword HD. I'm glad it's here. I'm glad my kids are getting to experience it. I think it's aged well. I think the art style was definitely meant for 480p. Some people didn't even realize the OG game was a painter style until now because it was blurry, but that was the whole reason they did that style, is because it looked good while blurry. Doesn't look quite as good while being crisp, especially some of the backgrounds. But the characters look great. I mean, the character models always look great, and they just look even better now. I do say I wish they would have went a little bit further with this game. Like in Wind Waker, they redid a lot of stuff in Wind Waker. And I kind of wish they would have did that this time too. Because it is a little weird, like at the beginning of the game, Groose is doing this whole pointing his finger thing, and like you could just see like the triangles on his hand, and it's kind of like, okay, like we could have updated these models a little bit. Like
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I like, of course, I'm bringing up a company that's going through a lot right now, but uh, Spyro the Dragon trilogy, how that was handled, the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, the Crash Team Racing, that remake style of visuals, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. You know what I mean? Like a repainting over the original polygon models with what can we do with today's tech. If that type of effort was applied to Skyward Sword's, visual theme, keeping the game the same, you still walk around this corner. We're not changing it up like Final Fantasy VII remake
Yeah,
style.
that's a whole different level.
Repainting the game, not just up-resing it. This game would have really shined on that because, like you said, the polygon models are still from 2011 on a machine that came out in 2006 with tech that's like from 2004. So the architecture of it, like you said, with Gruce's finger, now they look really good. They look nice, but
It looks clean, but it's
animation's
also
clean.
like it doesn't. Okay, that's not the way a hand and finger is quite shaped. But that was no one cared back then. Nowadays, it's like okay, but we have Breath of the Wild, we have other games that clearly have better modeling in it. Like, would it have been that much to like? There's not that many characters in this game. I don't think it would have been that much to at least just redo the models a little bit. You don't have to even change that much. It's just redoing it so it looks more natural, right? Not so many. I don't want to say jaggies because that also comes with anti-aliasing, and Nintendo just doesn't do that for some reason. And like anything they do, I don't really
Mhm.
know why. They just haven't. I don't think Nintendo has any games that have anti-aliasing. Someone's gonna correct me on that and find the one example where they do. But I can't think of a game that Nintendo uses anti-aliasing on. And there's no reason they can't. There's third-party games that do it on Switch. Um, but like that wouldn't fix this. This is literally a actual issue where the original models have very few triangles in them in comparison to what Switch is capable of. So why don't we like why didn't they put in the effort for that? And the only thing I can think of is just they just wanted to rush this bad boy out the door.
You know the effort that they did from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to their 3DS counterparts?
Yep.
That would have
That
been
was
great
very good
for this.
effort. I like the effort.
We went from Link's hands looking like this to, oh, okay, Link's got fingers. It's not
Yeah.
just a high resolution, it's new polygon models over everything. I mean, imagine if they finally got together, Nintendo and Xbox, and they're like, okay, we're going to bring you GoldenEye into today's era on both Nintendo Switch and Xbox Series.
Oh,
And
don't even. Oh,
everyone was still, if everyone was still like this, though, but in
oh.
1080p or 4K, no, we'd want to have that articulation. That's a sore topic because we almost got it once back on Wii and 360,
Yeah, I know. They tried.
but like I I would like to see Nintendo do that, and that part of me, like, I don't want to deviate into you know wishful conspiracy theory and stuff like that. But if I had a choice of give me Ocarina of Time, a 3DS port, or some kind of combination of the N64 and 3DS version in just HD and give it to me now, or hold off on that bad boy until 2023 for the 25th anniversary and give us a full-on proper remake where it's big, it's bold, it's repainted over. That's what I would want. I I think Nintendo respects its past, and sometimes it's how do you respect your past? You respect your past by saying, okay, fine, we'll give you something from the past, but we don't want to taint it, we don't want to touch it, we want to preserve it, and that's why we do stuff like Super Mario 3D Collection the way it was presented. But then sometimes you have them say, "Oh no, we're gonna go in and give you a remake." Like they want to keep the integrity and the vision of what they had before, and not as often as they probably could or should. Keep that vision, but take advantage of the modern tech. I would like to see that the latter happen more often. Give me that update.
Yeah, and like
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I mean, and I understand comparing to the Wind Waker HD is a bit unfair because Nintendo's actual Zelda team did that one.
They did it.
Whereas like the company who did this one is the one who did Twilight Princess HD. And Twilight Princess HD I didn't really feel like, at least to me, they really did any model changes on that one either. I mean, but they did do a lot of texture updates and replacing in that one, which they didn't do in this one. This is literally, if you go, legalities aside, go on an emulator and play an upred version of Skyward Sword from the Wii. This is what it looks like. Like there's no texture swaps or changes or anything. So moving on to our next topic here. This kind of brings things back around a little bit to the Switch OLED, sort of, but more so the whole Switch Pro situation, which I know, even you mentioned, at least behind the scene, that you've heard some information at time that obviously didn't happen, wasn't true, or at least hasn't happened yet at this point. And I go, one, history tells you that Nintendo's going to release a more powerful platform at some point, right? Like history, just that's what they've done. DSi, new 3DS, even look at Game Boy, they had the Game Boy Color. So like they've done these significantly upgraded platforms in the past in the same generation. And even now, you look at what Switch OLED is. I mean, it's kind of just a Switch XL in a way. It's a bigger screen. That's the selling point. Bigger, brighter, better screen. Okay, that sounds like a Switch XL. It's just not being called that. And it's very interesting because the Nintendo Switch OLED, it's not technically, that's not the name of the system. It's not called Nintendo Switch OLED. It's just called Nintendo Switch. OLED is just in parentheses at the bottom of the box. The actual platform on the dock, on the Switch, makes no reference to OLED. It's just a Switch. It's going to see this logo, guys? That's what it's going to be on the back. There's no reference on anything except on the box in brackets that it is an OLED platform. Which obviously, if you call it the Switch XL, that becomes part of the branding. So, because like Switch Lite, as well, doesn't have light on the back of the system, I don't believe. I have to go grab my son's Switch to make sure, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't say light on the back. It just has a Switch logo. So, I think about that, and I think about, obviously, that like Takahashi Machizuki at Bloomberg, that did a lot of the reporting, or a lot of the credible reporting on Switch stuff over the years on hardware, because he was right on the tech behind the original Switch. He was right about everything with Switch Lite, version 2 Switch, and really right about everything in Switch OLED, except for the fact that he kept mentioning 4K DLSS. He kept bringing that up. He was right about who's making the panels. He was right about the 7 inches, the OLED, the new kickstand. He was right about a whole bunch of the LAN port. All of that stuff he was right about. But he wasn't right about the 4K DLSS because he kept saying these were the same platform. And now we know that that's not true. But I kept wondering, if he's right about all this other stuff, then why is he wrong about 4K DLSS? And is it that he's not wrong, but he wasn't talking about the same platform? And while he thought it was the same platform, because he thought all this information's for a yet-to-be-released Switch, why wouldn't it be the same Switch? Maybe his information was really on another platform that Nintendo's working on, because Nintendo's always working on platforms. So it leads me to think, okay, so if there's this 4K DLSS capable something at some point in Nintendo's future, a Switch, even if it's not going to end up being the infamous Switch Pro, which is just a fan made up name, say it ends up being that next gen Switch. Let's say it comes out earliest, 2023, 2024? I would say if it's next gen, because I don't think they're going to replace, like have a whole new generation next year. That wouldn't make any sense. Not with the big games they have coming out. Then again, that's what Sony would do, so who the hell knows? But I kept thinking, like, I honestly think that there will be a more powerful platform for Switch coming, and I don't think they're going to call it a next generation Switch. I also don't think they're going to call it like a Switch 4K. I mean, maybe. I shouldn't say they're not going to call it Switch 4K, because who would have ever thought Switch OLED? Why would they even mention, like, so what the hell do I know? They'll probably put 4K in a bracket somewhere or whatever on the damn box. But kind of like there's 8K on the PlayStation 5 box, but I don't, why you're not getting 8K games on PlayStation. I mean, you're barely getting 4K games on PlayStation 5. Let's not, Okay, maybe you can play 8K Blu-rays or something. I have no idea. Maybe you can stream 8K Netflix, and maybe that's the big thing. I don't think 8K Netflix is a thing yet, but when it is a thing, um, I I kind of look at this as there's my personal desire for a more powerful Switch. I want a more powerful Switch. I want every single game. Like, I want Breath of the Wild 2 next year to be at native 1080 on my screen at 60 FPS. And I don't think that's asking too much. But I might be asking too much of the current hardware with that engine to do that without having to really sacrifice visual quality, especially to hit 60 FPS. Because it struggled to hit 30 FPS. And I understand that was built for Wii U. This would be built for the ground up for Switch. But it's still the same engine. So I don't suddenly think they're going to be able to gain an extra 30 frames, and be good. I think they might be able to hit 1080p at 30. But I want that 1080p 60. And I feel like we got 60 FPS in Skyward Sword HD. First ever 3D Zelda game to be 60 FPS. People are overlooking that. It's a big improvement and it's a big deal. Link Between Worlds was 60 FPS. Triforce Heroes was 60 FPS. So like a lot of the more recent games, Link's Awakening was 60 FPS. We're 60 FPS, except for Breath of the Wild. So it makes me realize that Nintendo seems to know that for Zelda games, 60 FPS is better. They know it, and they're going to do it when they can do it. And that's really the only reason why I want a more powerful Switch is just to have Nintendo games at 60 FPS. The third-party games, they're going to do what they're going to do. Because they push visual quality so high, I never expect any of them to ever be at 60 on Switch. And if they are, kudos. It's probably a multiplayer game, I assume. But that's the only reason that I want a more powerful Switch. I guess, as the topic says, do they need one, though? And do they need it soon? Because we talked earlier, they have such a killer lineup next year. And the primary reason we buy these platforms are the games. So if it keeps getting the big games, do we need that new hardware? As much as I might want it, I'm buying the games anyways. And so are most Nintendo fans. I don't know too many people that want to play Breath of the Wild 2 that are holding off on buying a Switch. Like say the game came out tomorrow. Oh, are they really going to just not buy a Switch and play the game because they can't run at 60 FPS? There might be some outliers that are like that. But I don't know, do they even need one? I think it's a fundamental question to ask because I feel like 2 years ago we could have easily said, oh yeah, they need one. But then Animal Crossing came out, the pandemic happened, everything sold out, and it's kind of like, well, the primary reason to release a more powerful platform is to boost sales. But they don't need a sales boost. So now what? Oh, because PlayStation 5's out? Well, I don't even know that a Switch Pro is going to get PS5 games anyways, ported over. So the primary reason, I think, is to upgrade the games that are already there or future games coming to it. I don't know. I'm in this mindset where I want new hardware, but also I don't know if we need it. I think it's more like a nice to have rather than a we need to have it soon. But you'll see people, even in the comments on this video, a lot of people say, man, dude, the hardware is ancient. We need something new. We just need something that can run Nintendo games alone at a solid 30 FPS, let alone 60. And I understand that sentiment. But also the games are still just as great as they are right now. So what are your thoughts?
I think Nintendo is better positioned at this 4.5-year point than they were with Wii, back at its point equivalent in September or August 2010. August 2010. So I think that the outlook of Nintendo Switch games in the future, they'll still have a higher attach ratio because you're like, how come Skyward Sword, when it came out and Nintendo Wii had almost 100 million, how come it didn't sell well? One of the things is, maybe the motion controls was a barrier, but also what is a new game looking like compared to what else is out on the market? It looks ancient in comparison to what's out there on the PS3, Xbox 360. I think Nintendo Switch, they would still sell very well in terms of the graphics, the gameplay, the excitement in Breath of the Wild 2, for instance, so they don't need to have new hardware to show off new visuals because it's in a better position than Wii. But I think Nintendo, on the other hand, knows we don't want what happened to Wii happened to this game, where come fall 2022, you've got Metroid Prime 4 that only looks like this on Nintendo Switch, up ahead the equivalent big blockbuster games that are totally outshining it on PS5 and Xbox Series X, where what's out on the market to the casual fan that's looking, this is the first person perspective game on this system, and then this one. The hardcore Nintendo fan, we're still going to love Metroid Prime 4, Bayonetta 3, we're going to eat it up. And they probably will look really good on the base Nintendo Switch, but to make it look a little bit better, to make it look a little bit more appealing, I think that's where that, I like calling it Nintendo Switch Plus, but that new Nintendo Switch, I think that's going to come in handy. So unnecessary because of how well it's selling, but almost necessary as a preventative measure of don't look too ancient compared to the new guys. And also, Nintendo likes to develop games for their systems, and they only go to that next system when they can't realize their vision on the current system. They couldn't do Super Mario 64 on the SNES. That's when they went to a new system. They couldn't pull off Wind Waker on N64. They went to GameCube. There's a little more to it than that because they're competing against, Sony, Microsoft, back in the day, Sega. But oh, okay,
Could you?
no, all good. But I think with Nintendo Switch, they're in an interesting position. It's different than any console that we've had before because it's strong, and you don't want to lose that momentum. And I think that's part of it. Can Nintendo Switch just fine be the system that is there to play Breath of the Wild 2 and Metroid Prime 4? It's going to be the system, but Nintendo's artists, their engineers, their developers, do they want to? Do they see the game of Breath of the Wild 2 at its most optimum being in 1080p 60 frames per second? I think it's going to come to the developers internally saying, we want this game to run at this level. It was fine running at this level in 17. Super Mario Odyssey, that's our vision. We had the vision of a 900p 60 frames per second game, and that's good. But going forward, we want some more hardware because we want more graphics processing to make the vision bigger. It'll still work on this base model, but ideally, it'll run at 60 1080p. The base model could be 3900 or whatever. And also maybe to compete, but then that's another topic of you're starting to divide the market. Does Nintendo Switch Plus have the capability of playing exclusive games? Maybe not made by Nintendo, but by third parties. Nintendo can't just rely on their own games. They do need third-party support too. An ideal Nintendo console has a lot of third-party games, and Switch has a lot more than we did comparatively to the competition.
Yeah. Well, that gets into my concept that I mentioned a while ago back in 2017 about how instead of having like generations, they just keep releasing new hardware and eventually phase out old. Like this is an iPhone 12, you could still get the same operating system and the same apps all the way back to like an iPhone 8 or whatever. But when the 13 comes out, they'll stop giving those updates to the 8, and then slowly but surely there'll be apps you can only get on newer generation iPhones than the 8. And I kind of feel like that's sort of what could happen here, whereas like if they release a more powerful Switch and they don't call it a new generation, it's just the next Switch. And it does get exclusive games, say even from third parties at first, if not from Nintendo. That's going to be okay because if they just never, because my concept is that Switch is basically a never-ending generation. It never ends. They just keep releasing more of them until they decide to move on from this concept of a hybrid platform. So they want to innovate and do something else, which right now I don't think they really need to. And I don't think most people think they need to because the only other, person in their market right now would be something like a Steam Deck. And Steam Deck doesn't get exclusives. So there's a whole separate market for what that really is. And we have yet to see if that's even going to compete with Switch. Well, we'll have to. We're not going to know, I don't think, for a while because I don't think they have enough Steam Decks made to even worry about it at the moment. The demand for it's way higher than the supply. So we have to wait until Valve can get that sorted out before we even know if it can even touch Switch. I don't think it's going to affect Switch sales, at least not in this first year here, but maybe in a couple of years, who knows. But I don't think Nintendo needs to worry about what Sony's doing or what Microsoft is doing or Valve, because again, they kind of operate in their own market. So a lot of them doing this would be to do what Furukawa keeps saying he doesn't want to happen. He doesn't want to see Nintendo have that cliff. And that cliff happens for a multitude of reasons. One, obviously game support dropping off. And two, for a while now, things have just drastically changed platform to platform. Now, back in the day, I think one reason why you saw sales decline to the SNES, decline to the N64, etc., is because other companies who were doing the same thing as you were doing started doing it in a different, better way. And so they ate into your market. And then on top of that, backwards compatibility wasn't even a thing back then. So every time you got a new platform, you were basically starting all over again from square one. And obviously, you had Sega doing its thing where they ate into things a little bit with Genesis. And then obviously PlayStation with the CDs and going a completely different direction in that way. And that really ate into it. So PlayStation 2 significantly ate into it, and that's arguably what led to Wii existing. And then how Nintendo has found success after ditching the traditional, let's upgrade to a more powerful platform every time, maybe change some stuff with the controller, but for the most part, they're just reiterating controllers from the past with adding new features, which is what Sony's been doing. That's what Xbox does. They decided, hey, we can't keep doing that because other people basically do it better than we do. So instead of us doing that, and I'm not talking about power, guys, by the way. I'm well aware GameCube was more powerful than the PlayStation 2. The power wasn't the problem. The mini disc was the problem. But that's a whole separate conversation about why some games on PlayStation 2 still look better than Switch. Well, yeah, because people had a hard time compressing down to that mini disc. Had nothing to do with capabilities. But the thing is, that's when Nintendo started, okay, when did they get their big success? Drastic different than the handheld marketplace. 2 screens, one of them a touchscreen. Clamshell design. Boom. Blows up. 150 million. Oh, we're going to basically give you GameCube hardware again. And yes, I know, guys, it was a little bit better than GameCube hardware, but it was basically GameCube hardware in the Wii. But we're going to give you motion controls. And we're going to give you a packing game that everyone understands, because everyone understands bowling. If you didn't understand tennis, you do now. Like, basic sports that all of us have been around our whole life at some point. At least we've seen it, right? And it was fun. And it was fun to play with your girlfriends and your boyfriends and your kids and your grandparents. Like, it was fun. And it made sense. And then, okay, we're going to try, this whole off TV play, but we're going to make it super inconvenient because you're still tethered to a console and you got to be within like 6 feet of the damn thing to even take advantage of that feature. Okay. It didn't really feel right. Switch is the right way to do it. That was kind of like it's like a proof of concept, but that's not really a market-ready device. And that should have been obvious in testing that wasn't a market-ready device. But it is what it is. And Nintendo, instead of advertising it, one way, they tried saying that this is the most powerful gaming console we've ever made. This is our Xbox 360. This is our PlayStation 3. This is, for the gamers, for you. Wii was for the family. Wii U is for you. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Too bad the other companies a year later are releasing more powerful hardware than what you're offering when you're trying to advertise your thing as super powerful with an unprecedented partnership with EA and all. Like, Nintendo has found their success by changing things up, but I think changing things up has also led to the cliffs. Like, I can tell you right now, I want Nintendo to go with this generationless future, have upgraded Switches every couple of years, every few years, slowly phase out old ones. That's what I want Nintendo to do. What they're likely going to do is never give us a more powerful Switch. We're going to hit 2024. They're going to milk this thing till it doesn't sell anymore, right? It'll be moving 2 million units in its final year, because this is what Nintendo has traditionally done. You're in that final year, you get like one offshoot Mario Party game or something like that. Maybe then that's when they decide to finally give us another Star Fox game and throw it out to die when no one cares about Switch anymore. And then they're going to give us a drastically different platform than what we've been playing for 10 years. And it's going to confuse the marketplace, and no one's going to buy the damn thing, and Nintendo's going to sink it, because this is what Nintendo does. Like, they can't go back-to-back success stories with their unique ideas. Like, I think if they would have followed up Wii with Switch, never had Wii U happen, I think things might have been a little different there, and that's two drastically different directions, but not abandoned. Like, this feels like an evolution. Take this off, you still have motion controls. This is like an evolution of Wii, well, combined with their handhelds, and it made sense. And I think that Furukawa wants to avoid that cliff, so there's a high chance that he might go that iterative route. But also, this is Nintendo, and God knows their next platform is going to be another box you put under your TV, or it's going to be like a Roku streaming stick that nobody buys because it costs $500. And Nintendo's like, but yeah, this is the only streaming stick you could play Nintendo games on. And everyone's going to be like, or I could just hook my phone up to my TV and play the games I already have. Why am I spending money on that? Or I already have an Apple TV, or a Roku, or a Google this, or a Fire TV. Why do I need another thing that's in that marketplace? Oh, because Nintendo's branded on it. Like, it feels like that's what Nintendo has always done, is just follow up really brilliant ideas with stupid ones. And I'm not, and I say, by the way, guys, I'm not knocking like 3DS and Wii U. I actually really like those platforms personally, but it's more so from a marketing perspective, it didn't make sense. And now here we are. I mean, even 3DS, God, everyone thought 3DS was going to be big. One, DS was 150 million. Two, glasses-free 3D, and it works. This is crazy good. Yeah, but does the marketplace actually give a shit? Did anyone ever think for a moment, this looks really cool, but who's going to care after a month? Did anyone ever think, like, okay, it's a cool gimmick, but like you can't sell a whole platform on that? No? No one ever thought about that? Okay, cool. So everyone over projected sales, saying this is the coolest thing ever. And it's like saying VR. That's the next big thing is VR. I'm like, well, VR, yeah, it's sticking around better than it's ever done before. Still isn't really super popular. And most of the time you see anyone play VR is still when they're at arcades or like random stops at a mall that has a VR station. Like, most people aren't installing in their home. Most people don't have the room to have VR in their homes. Like, let's just be honest. The best VR setups don't just require cameras and the thing. They require separate cameras if you actually want super accurate VR, and that requires a room and space. People don't want to install cameras and all this crap in their house. So we're to this point where I wonder if this president gets it, because he's the one that specifically mentioned, I've been here a long time. We always fall off a cliff. I don't want that to happen again. Well, then you have to release a new product that makes sense and is smart. And right now, like Wii, you could understand why they needed to move on from Wii, because everyone copied them, basically. Sony added motion to their platform. Then they took motion to the next level with VR, which was like, obviously the next natural evolution for motion controls was to go to VR. Well, Sony beat you to it. And so did Quest, and so did all these other versions of VR. So, okay, now anything you do there is going to be behind all of that. So you can't really go further with your motion, because it is what it is at this point. You can make better motion controls, but you're not going to be able to sell a platform again on the basis of, oh, we have cool motion sports games. Like, that's not going to work again. So then what's next? This is what was next, but it's just this thing that I wonder if Furukawa gets it. Right now, there's nothing next. There's nothing replacing this. A lot of people want to act like Steam Deck is replacing this, but it's not. It's just another form of PC. Do people understand how many different forms of PC there are? There's a lot of forms of PC, and none of them have ever replaced game consoles. They've tried. Companies have tried. You think the Steam Deck is the first portable Switch-like looking thing? Have you looked at the GPD win? Have you looked at all the other... Yeah, okay, so this one's only 400. Yeah, there's been some as low as 500 and 600 before too. Bottom line is, they're PCs. They're limited to what PCs are. They're multitask. They're not purpose-built to necessarily play games. Steam Deck, I know, comes with Steam OS, but if you're using Steam OS, then you're limited to just Steam. Whereas one of the advantages people talk about with Steam Deck is, oh, I can put Windows 10 on it, and then, yeah, but then you have all the Windows 10 overhead, and then all the overhead of other stuff, and before you know it, the Steam Deck ends up not running as well as you think it should. So at the end of the day, there isn't anything purpose-built just for gaming, that only does gaming, that does what Switch does. Dock with your TV easily, by the way. Steam Deck, you have to buy the dock separately.
Yeah.
Or quick play and go. It just works. Heck, you multimedia, I mean, I guess there's Hulu, YouTube. I mean, this is like the worst multimedia device in anyone's home. It's got like hardly anything on it. Nintendo is very much, this is a gaming machine meant for gaming. That's all it does. Everything in its purpose built for gaming. We don't give a shit about anything else. And there's nothing else in the world that really touches what Nintendo's doing specifically with this platform the way that it does it. And so that's why I have this hope that the new president, Shigeru Furukawa, can look at this, the Switch OLED sales, hopefully a Switch Pro or Switch 2 or whatever they do, and be like, you know, why are we abandoning something that has no competition? Why aren't we just continuing to push that more and more and more? And I understand that, by the way, not having competition is why we still are entering 5 years in without upgraded hardware. Competition does help push you, and that's why some people hope that Steam Deck might affect sales a little bit, so Nintendo then pushes out a new system. But also, Nintendo has a tendency that, oh, someone else is doing what we're doing but doing it better. Yeah, we're out of here. We're going to do something else. And I don't want Nintendo to do that. So I'm hoping that Furukawa sees, you know, how we avoid the cliff is we stop confusing our consumer base. Because as Nintendo fans, does anyone watching this podcast right now have any idea what Nintendo's doing for their next generation system? See, if you're a Sony owner, you already know what PlayStation 6 is going to be, right? When you were PlayStation 4, you knew what PlayStation 5 was going to be, right? It's just a better version of what you already know. You don't know what you're getting next from Nintendo. And I feel like that's, for the last 20 years, been kind of the bugaboo about Nintendo and Nintendo owners is we don't know what's next. It's exciting, but also it could be shit. And we have no idea. Whereas if we just knew Nintendo was going to be dedicated to this hybrid format, home console, on the go kind of thing, it doesn't even have to look like Switch, but if they're just dedicated to this format and they're going to keep going with this, and we knew it for the next 20 years, that's what they're doing, how much more confidence do we have in Nintendo's next platforms and bringing more powerful ones out? Because, hey, we know, oh, what's the next one good? Okay, cool. Well, I'm not really okay with the Switch the way it is now, but I can wait for Nintendo's next platform because I know it's just going to be this, but better. But I don't know that that's going to happen. And I feel like that's a lot of the people want the Switch Pro now because they don't know that we're ever going to get this platform but better from Nintendo anyways. Because we don't. Because Nintendo has not given us a reason to think that we're going to. As I said, it could be a streaming stick next. We have no idea what Nintendo's working on. I hope that's not the case. I hope they leave streaming to the experts, and Nintendo can't even get their online gameplay right, so please don't go to streaming. Not yet, anyways. And I'm okay with game streaming, by the way. No problem with it. I've used Google Stadia a little bit, and it actually works out pretty well. And I'm sure Microsoft's xCloud probably works fine too. I can't imagine it wouldn't. They have like the best or second best server infrastructure in the world, so I wouldn't be shocked if that works fine. I don't know that Nintendo needs new hardware soon, but I think what they need is assurities about the future of their platforms. And I think as Nintendo fans, we don't have any assurances that Nintendo's not going to abandon a concept that clearly we love and clearly can be expanded on in a way that we couldn't. We was a lightning in a bottle product. That the natural expansion of that was VR, and Nintendo didn't go that route. There's not really a natural expansion for what this is. There's no what's next. Well, what's next is you do this, but better. Make it better. Make it more ergonomic. Maybe, thin it down a little bit. Maybe make the button placement a little bit better, right? Fix the Joy-Cons, different Joy-Con designs. There's not really a direction to go with this other than you just make this better. You found a way to make a platform that's like what everyone else is doing. Sony, Xbox, just make a more powerful box. Just make a more powerful box. No one else is in your market, Nintendo. Just make a more powerful this and keep it going. You have no reason not to. Except that you're Nintendo. And I feel like that's what I want more as a Nintendo fan than anything, is assurances that this concept isn't going to be abandoned soon. That's what I care about more so than getting a Switch Pro. Okay, fine. Give me a next-gen Switch in 3 years. But a next-gen Switch. Not a something else entirely different that just confuses you. Like you're going from this to all of a sudden you don't have a portable home console anymore. Or you only have a handheld that doesn't dock anymore. Like, no, I don't want that either. So, just speaking as a YouTuber, I really don't want that because then I got to modify the damn thing to get video signal out of it. I had to do that with the 3DS. So, I don't know. Like that's well. What do you think, Paul? Like, do you care more that we get a more powerful platform soon, or that Nintendo just assures us that hey, this whole concept, by the way, isn't going like they told us 10 years when this thing came out. Okay, fine, but I want to hear that you're not abandoning this concept until you absolutely have to. Like, I want them to kind of GameCube it. You keep going till people don't want the damn thing anymore.
I think they should go the Nintendo Switch successor route, ever evolving, fluid role, because there is no other competition on the market, like you said, for what it does. Not even Steam Deck exactly. I love the system. I think it still feels magical, Playing Doom Eternal, for instance.
You put Doom
on
Eternal
Nintendo.
on there, there's just something that's like, wait a second, this is in my hands. And now I know Steam Deck's going to give you that experience as well, too, by the way, now. So some of that magic's gone a little bit, but yeah.
But going from TV and then putting it in the car, Sometimes my wife and I, we switch places driving and stuff like that, but playing a game that looks really good and is modern, like Mortal Kombat 11, even though that one, or Dragon Ball FighterZ is a better example. Equal parity visually to PS4, Xbox One. We go on an hour ride. She drives. I'm sitting portable, and I take that experience and take it on the go. I don't do much flying or public transportation, but that's my taking my home console on the go. I want to see it continue. I feel like Nintendo is this experimental magician, though, where sometimes they hit lightning in a bottle, and then they want to hit it again, and sometimes they're off with Virtual Boy off, with Wii on, with Wii U a little bit too early tech for what they, were trying to achieve, which is Nintendo Switch. If they want to get experimental, I say be experimental with releasing N64 Classic Edition, releasing, a Metroid-themed portable handheld, kind of like a Playdate kind of thing, like just these offshoots. But as far as your main console goes, let this be the future. You could argue that both 3DS and PSP, or 3DS and PS Vita fell after DS and PSP. But was that because the market wasn't interested in handhelds, or because smartphones came out kind of a few years in, and that's why the smartphone market is what took over? If Nintendo gets a feeling that this is no longer magical, that's when they're going to experiment and say, okay, we got to do something new again. And that's like what you said, we're going to do a Roku stick on the side of a TV, or we're going to go back to a disc-based console and undo all of the feel that people got from Nintendo. Like, they don't have a very clear identity with the world. The world knows Mario. They know Zelda, Donkey Kong, to an extent. They know Metroid and Star Fox, and now Animal Crossing. They know the games. They know the name Nintendo. But what does Nintendo mean as a hardware thing? Nothing has ever been, like you said, PS1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's been, switching numbers from Super to 64 to GameCube to Wii. Wii actually is just called Wii. It's not even called Nintendo Wii.
Yep.
Officially. So they're all over the place, and they've existed for a long time, but the general consumer kind of wants something safe, something reliable, something that they could depend on, get behind a brand. And I think that the Nintendo Switch concept is great. I wouldn't be, the greedy part of me says I want Nintendo to go hardcore, big machine, equal power to PS5 Series X. Let me see the next Zelda on that. But I'm also okay with, I'm okay with the graphics being a little bit of a generation behind, just visually speaking, than the competition. If that's every generation going forward, every generation, that we use loosely, the Nintendo machine is always going to play the games close to the competition, but their IP is always going to look like the other consoles did the previous gen, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Like the next gen Switch.
Well,
That's
it's
when
kind
we're
of like
going
I
to
always
get
tell people,
Mario.
if you have a newer iPhone, go ahead and find iPhone 1 pictures and get actual size and hold your phone up to it. And all you're going to see is you're using the same phone you were in 2007. Difference is they kept upgrading the hardware and just making minor improvements along the way that leads to a much better smartphone experience today. And there's not really a reason that Nintendo can't do that, especially when Nintendo doesn't have a Samsung and LG and all these other companies trying to do what they do and do it better and in their own way. Nintendo's on their own, basically. Steam Deck's the only thing, and even then, platforms like that have existed forever for PC and hasn't really impacted anything on the console side because it's still a PC. And that's not to knock it. That's actually a benefit to that platform that it's a PC. But it also is kind of not always as convenient as, say, Switches. Slapping in the dock and picking up. There's nothing extra you have to plug in. Everything's right there. The controllers slide off. Like on a Steam Deck, you put it in there. Controllers don't detach. You have to have a separate controller, as an example. Like everything you need for Switch comes in the box to do everything. Steam Deck, you want to make it like a Switch? Okay, you're going to have to end up spending, assuming you don't have an extra controller, which most of us do, but let's say you don't have an extra controller and you don't have the dock ahead of time, which of course you won't. Okay, well then you're $600 deep on the cheapest model of it before you can get to all the functionality the Switch has. And that's not even all of it because this has motion controls. So if you want even motion control capability, which by the way, there are some PC games that support it, well then you got to buy the right motion controls that will sync with that platform as well. And so now you're $700-800 deep. Like people look at the Steam Deck as, well, if I just hold it in my hand and play games with traditional button controls, that's great. That's fine. Not every PC game, by the way, works with traditional button controls, and we don't want to get into that when we talk about Steam Deck because people want to focus on the games that do, but there's quite a few PC games that are mouse and keyboard, and that's the way they're meant to be, and they suck with controllers. Some of them don't even have controller options. And I know they give you two little touchpads for you to try to mimic things. It's not going to feel good. I can tell you right now, it's just like there's a reason that you see people when they game on their laptop, they plug a mouse in. They don't use the touchpad when they're gaming. It's not viable. So like that's what people don't understand. Like when I say that Steam Deck isn't really a competition for this, think about all the ways this platform functionally works out of the box for $300. Steam Deck, you have to buy all this extra shit to get all that functionality. So if you think about, oh, it's $400, yeah, but it doesn't have detachable controllers that you can slide into a thing and have a traditional controller with you. You got to buy that extra. It doesn't come with the dock to quickly work with your TV or a monitor. You got to buy that extra. So like, how did they get the Steam Deck to $400? They cut features that Switch has and sell it to you separately. That's how. So if you still want the full functionality of what Switch does, but with a more powerful platform like a Steam Deck, you still got to spend a lot more money. Bottom line is Nintendo's in their own market, and I want them to keep going this way, and I want assurances from Nintendo. I don't think we ever will get assurances. It's not like we get assurances from Sony that PlayStation 6 is going to be a more powerful. It's just we have history. History tells you that's what they're going to do. Why would they stop doing it when the system keeps selling over 100 million? It makes no sense. Of course they're going to keep doing it. Why would you throw out 100 million worth of sales? That's dumb. Keep doing it. If it ain't, as someone in the chat point, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I feel like that's the way we are with Switch. We're about to enter 5 years in, and this thing might sell 20 plus million in its 5th year. Okay. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep making better ones. There's no reason to change what clearly still sells. Like, we lost its novelty over time. I don't think this is lost. You even mentioned to this day, it's still so cool you play Doom Eternal on here. Even if you buy a Switch for your first time today, and then you buy Breath of the Wild in a discount bin for $45 or whatever, and you put it in, you're still going to be like, holy shit. I'm playing this in my hands on the go. Like, my phone might be better, but I don't remember playing too many games like this on my phone. Like, yeah. It's still one of those experiences that it's like, man, this is really cool. And that's still today, 4.5 years in. So I look at it and I go, look, the demand isn't slowing down for this because unlike prior platforms for Nintendo, the novelty hasn't gone anywhere. And there aren't other companies that are really doing it better, per se. Like, Wii U instantly had companies doing it better. So, who cared? It kind of brushed it under the table, and that's before you get into the branding and the gamepad, and was that a mistake, and all, whatever. But this makes so much sense and has so much momentum that if they just keep making games for it, I think it's going to keep selling well. I don't know that it's going to always sell at 20 million per year clip, but maybe even on down years it's selling 15 million per year. That's still a lot of units. That's like peak years of some of Nintendo's best systems. So I think Nintendo, if anything, needs to release more powerful hardware, I'd say in the next 2 years. Not necessarily out of necessity, because I think they're going to have a strong enough lineup in 2022 and probably 2023 to maintain a lot of the momentum they have now, but to ensure fans on the future of the platform. If we give you a more powerful platform, maybe not next year, but say 2023, if we announce, in spring or summer that, hey, we're bringing you you don't have to get it. It'll play all current Switch games. All currently planned games in the future will also play on the current Switch, but you get this platform. This is where you're getting your 4K through DLSS. This is where you're going to get current games. Breath of the Wild 2, that now runs at 60 FPS on this platform instead of the 30 on your current one. And, all of them are going to have the OLED screens. And maybe here we made some slight improvements to the Joy-Cons, where your old Joy-Cons can still work with this and you can still use it, but we have a slightly new designed one as well that's going to come out with this, that you can also, by the way, take those Joy-Con and use it on your old Switch if you want, because we're going to have the same rail system and it's going to all be cross-compatible. So it's still technically all the same generation of device, but you know what? We're giving you this more powerful one. Not because we need to compete with PlayStation 5, but because we need to have something that's modern and dedication to this concept. Dedicating to this concept shows they released that in 2023. You think, guys, they're going to magically, in 2024, come out with a drastically different platform? After just releasing... That's the only reason why I want something soon in the next couple of years. Just so Nintendo shows me, hey, we're dedicated to this form factor and we ain't going anywhere. Oh, the Steam Deck's had its time in the sun for a couple of years. Oh, they finally got their manufacturing. That's cool. Well, by the time they got their feet under them for manufacturing, here you go. By the way, this thing kicks the shit out of the Steam Deck. Have a good day.
No.
That's what I feel like Nintendo's in this position for. Like, even if Steam Deck gets momentum, by the time manufacturing's caught up with that platform, Nintendo could already be like, we're not even worried. Like, oh, now you want the Steam Deck. Well, hey, for the same price, we have a better platform that, by the way, still has detachable controllers with motion control, still has the better kickstand, still comes with a dock, all this stuff for the same price. And by the way, it's more modern now compared to what you're using. And yeah, we stuck with NVIDIA, and look, it paid off. Now we're using Lovelace, Orin stuff, and we're at the bleeding edge, and you guys are still doing fine, but still using a laptop APU. We're using something purpose-built for us. Have a good day. Because that's one thing people don't talk about with NVIDIA is they're pulling, by the way. They're like, one of the big things that made NVIDIA Shield TV popular in China was before Switch was there, they were letting Wii games and stuff go over there. That was part of the partnership with NVIDIA, was Nintendo would let them bring Wii games in HD. They're pulling that now. You can't do that now that Switch is there. They're saying, nope, we're done. We're not selling these games anymore on the NVIDIA Shield TV. And NVIDIA Shield TV sales have been going down while Switch sales have been going up. And I think NVIDIA and Nintendo kind of see what's happening here. The future of your mobile gaming APUs is you make them for Nintendo. That's what it's going to be. And that's, hopefully, I'm sure NVIDIA hopes they can convince other console manufacturers to take on their technology eventually. But I think NVIDIA is going to be pushing Nintendo because they want to feature their new stuff. And not just in smart cars. Like, nobody thinks about the GPUs and CPUs that are in smart cars. They're actually pretty powerful in some of the modern ones. But no one thinks about it like that. People want to know, okay, what could an Orin Lovelace thing do for gaming? Well, you're going to find out on Nintendo's next platform. Because I don't see anybody else picking it up. And this, by the way, I am not a Team Green guy. My computer is literally running a Ryzen 2700X and a 5700 XT. I love AMD. I've always loved AMD since I was a kid. But I mean, There's a reason that Team Green seems to always be ahead of Team Red in the graphics department. Right now, Team Red has an advantage in the mobile space. I don't think that advantage is going to last. NVIDIA bought ARM. I just want people to, I don't know if people understand how big a deal it is that NVIDIA bought ARM. ARM makes CPUs that are used in supercomputers. They also make some of the best mobile CPUs. It's like them, Apple, and whoever does the Snapdragon one or whatever. They make like the best mobile CPUs out there. And there's really damn good ARM mobile CPUs right now that kick the shit out of what's even in the PlayStation 5. Now, I don't think Switch is going to have those because they're really freaking expensive. But the point is that like the technology is all going to be right there for Nintendo to sell a $400 device in 2 years. That they might be able to get away with that price point, especially if it's not like replacing this. If they could still sell this, although at this point this will be a $300 OLED model, not this version, and they could still sell that and be like, look, you don't have to buy that. That's sold out this holiday. It's cool. You can still buy this. You can still buy a Lite. You can still play all our latest games on that. And then by the time we can get this thing massive stock and all the sale, like look what happened with new 3DS, everyone. Literally, they stopped making the 3DS because the new 3DS sales just dwarfed 3DS sales so badly it didn't make sense to keep making the 3DS. And that, I think, is where Nintendo could see success with a platform like this. Is you release it in 2 years, and if it starts selling so well that nobody's buying this anymore, then you just stop making it. And suddenly everything's going green for Nintendo, and we're talking about, all right, cool, when's the upgraded version of this? When's the upgraded version for the Switch Lite? They can literally redo the Lite again, but with the new hardware. And suddenly we're just reliving Switch all over again, and it just never ends, and that's what I want to happen.
I wish we had that predictable future.
I know. If it was Sony, we just already knew this was happening if it was Sony.
In July of 2019, when they dropped the Switch Lite out of nowhere, at that point I thought, man, I hope this is what Nintendo does. 1 year, a Switch. 2 years later, a Lite. 2 years after that, a Plus. 2 years after that, Switch 2. 2 years later, Switch 2 Lite. 2 years after, Switch 2 Plus. 2 years later, Switch 3. And continue like that. And you know what you're getting. But Nintendo's not going to do that. They're not going to say that that's what's going to happen. Things are going to happen when they do. But at that point, you would have gamers that say, I won't buy a Switch 2 at launch because I'll wait 4 years for Switch 2 Plus and not hop in early on. So by keeping people always guessing, early adopters are going to, hop onto everything. And then kind of Nintendo will release whatever they want, whenever they want in a generation to get people that have been on the fence, folks. I think, going back to Nintendo Switch OLED, well, not that we ever left OLED really, but I think it's cool. I think part of what the naysay was so strong against it was so much more was anticipated. If no rumors got out about it, no leaks, no, reports, accurate, inaccurate information combination, and Nintendo just boom. A couple weeks after E3 dropped Nintendo Switch OLED, be like, whoa, this is cool. We're getting like a bigger screen and an improved dock with, a LAN port in it. Oh, more RAM, 64 gigs of memory. Storage, but hey, that's pretty cool. It was built up too much, but I do think it's coming. It just, do they do a more powerful revision? And if they do, when? And then is the successor actually another portable hybrid console? How do they evolve it? Like you said, how does Nintendo keep it fresh and not lose that awesome magic without going unnecessary? Or do they say, okay, we're building the Nintendo Switch 2 in mind, or maybe not 2, but maybe down the road, we're building it in mind that it's got the screen where it needs to be, that it perfectly comes with this little headset and it doubles up as VR without buying anything else. It's not the best VR, but every system out of the box comes with it. Or they bring a camera back and they stick it on the outside and they're like, well, now AR is better and we have a stronger CPU and GPU that we could incorporate our next big 3D Mario game. and it's using AR. Like, what do they do without abandoning this dual concept? Because this concept of TV and tabletop mode and handheld is wonderful. Don't lose that because this is Nintendo's
Also,
best.
I think an interesting direction for, I don't think this is going to happen soon, but foldable screens are becoming a thing that's not affordable for average consumers, but like something that's a real thing. And I feel like a decade from now, how crazy would it be for them to release? Okay, here's our next gen Switch. It's half of the of the thickness of this and the tablet part. But guess what? People always complain. Oh yeah, now it's got an 8-inch screen. God, that's too big to be portable. Is it? It folds in half and you can stick it in your pocket. That's like same concept. We just made it more portable for you. Easy peasy. Folds in half, stick it in your pocket. Good to go. Again, this isn't going to happen soon because the foldable screen technology is not even close to affordable at the moment. But it's just one of those things where you can kind of see ebbs and flows in the technology. Where I think one obvious solution is this is a thick boy. They can make this thinner. The reason it's thick is because they got to have a fan in it. There's cooling solutions they can have out there where they don't need to have a moving part in there anymore. And then they could thin it up. But I will have to see if they go with vapor chamber and other designs like that exist in things like mobile phones that are thinner but more powerful. They could definitely do it. It's a question of obviously NVIDIA's technology as well and what the power profile and heat profile is on that. But yeah, I obviously think that there's a bright future here. Let's quickly get into this last topic because I'm very curious on your face. I kind of want to hear like your 3 most anticipated games. It can be for any platform, doesn't have to be Switch. But we're both big Nintendo guys, so I'm sure there's going to be some Switch games in there. So what are your 3 most anticipated games, and why are you so looking forward to them?
3 most. It's easy to say Metroid Dread first. I mean, if you want to hear my number 1, I'll tell you right now, Breath of the Wild 2. But
Yes!
I'm trying to go a little more proximity based in time because I don't know if that's going to be a November game or a March game.
Is it going to get delayed to 2023?
But Metroid Dread, like, I'm a big Metroid fan. I brought out the Samus Aran statue right here today to kind of have as the background. But Metroid Dread, I love 2D Metroid. I love 3D Metroid. I love the character of Samus Aran. I always wish that Metroid got to be bigger, because it's such a good IP and she's a cool character. And Metroid Dread holds a special place because when I was working, in my gamers.com, 1up.com days, and we would get rumors and stuff like that. And over on IGN, Matt Casamassina, Mark Bozon, if you're familiar with those names, those guys, a lot of us had talks and were trying to pull what we could out of Dread and never went anywhere too much with it. So the fact that this vision is coming too, I'm excited for Nintendo. I'm excited as the gamer to get to play that. And the game looks beautiful, and it's just 2 months out. Absolutely stoked for it. Breath of the Wild 2. I'll end on my second game. I'll go with my actual number 1. Breath of the Wild finally became my new favorite game of all time. It's so easy to hop back into. It's such a big world. You know it. You love it. I know it's your favorite as well. So you feel the same way. I want to see Zelda. Each Zelda game feels like an event. Very few games feel like true events that I look forward to in life, that I have this association with of when that game came out, what time of life it was for me, what else was going on. I relate it to, that Mario, that Zelda game, that Street Fighter game. Those are like the special trilogy, the trio for me. I want to see, does it have connections to Skyward Sword? What happened to Zelda in the fall? Like, are we playing as different links? Just so much mystery in it. That game for sure is my number 1. As far as what is my third then? I mean, it would probably be of what we know that's coming out. If we could say wishful thinking, I could probably come up with something else. But of what we know is coming out, I was such a huge Perfect Dark fan back in the day on N64. That just seeing that little trailer,
knowing they're going to make it, or at least try to make it.
knowing that it's happening, finally, every year my prediction video for E3 is just please give me a Perfect Dark. Like, I know I'm going to
Please,
get lots of
please.
stuff. Just give me a new one, man. And then when they had that reveal, that laptop gum hit the wall, I was like, oh my gosh, are we watching Perfect Dark? And then Joanna turns it around. I'm like, Perfect Dark, you know? And I have no idea when's it going to come out. I don't know if the game's going to look any good, but just the fact that it's existing, I'd say probably PD, you know? If we want to get into speculation territory, I could throw a couple other ones that like Donkey Kong, but we don't know if it's real yet, so I can't say it for sure. Otherwise, Donkey Kong would be pretty high, you know?
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Um. So, like, I want to say Metro Prime 4,
Oh yeah,
but
well, sorry, Metro Prime 4, Bayonetta 3. I forgot. No,
yeah,
I don't want
like
to
I
take
want
that.
to say Metro Prime 4, but like, it's
That's
not
hard.
vaporware. It's real. It's just
Real.
it feels like it's still so far off, and maybe it's really not. Maybe it's gonna end up being next year. I have no idea, but it just still feels like it's so far off that I'm not. I'm really anticipating Metro Prime 4, but also, I mean, it's not like I wake up every day thinking about it because I just don't know if it went. I mean, it's just like Beyond Good and Evil, like too. Like, oh my god, am I super hyped for that game? But like, when in my lifetime do I think I'm actually going to get to play the damn thing? I know it exists somewhere. It's just like Skull and Bones. I know it exists somewhere, but when the hell am I actually going to get to play? I have no idea. So like, my hype for these games kind of dies the longer it takes for them to get here because it's kind of like I just don't know when I'm going to get to play these. So my number one game is obviously Breath of the Wild 2, but again, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. The moment they showed that new trailer with him falling from the sky, I was already sold, and then just every second of that trailer just hyped me to the max. So I think I don't have to say much. I can say a lot about Breath of the Wild 2, and I feel like I spent a lot of time during E3 and post E3 talking about it. So I'm gonna kind of let that be, but that is obviously one of my top three most anticipated. Um, but after that, it gets interesting because like one game I'm really looking forward to that I don't know if it's getting the well, it probably is getting the attention it deserves in the right circles. Age of Empires 4. I'm a
Mm.
big Age of Empires guy. Grew up on it. There's a game I've played more than any other, like even like World of Warcraft that I've got years of my lifetime sunk into. Like Age of Empires, Age of Empires 2, 1 and 2 specifically, I have sunk 4 years of my life probably into playing those in gameplay time. Love the hell out of those games, and I played the hell out of the HD versions. Age of Empires 3 I played a lot of as well. Didn't enjoy it as much as the first two. More so was just the time period it took place in. I don't think it really fit well with the kind of game that it was. Um, but Age of Empires 4 looks like a return to form, and I'm really excited by it. They've tried other spin-offs and online versions of it that weren't really good. Age of Empires 4 looks like everything I want it to be so far. We'll have to see what happens when it comes out because I think it comes out in October. But I'm really, really looking forward to that one. And then I was going to say Metroid Dread because it is such a big deal game. A canceled game coming back. No one ever thought Dread itself, like that specific game, was ever going to come back. You know, a fabled, in development, hell forever, then canceled kind of thing. Um, and then obviously just it being a new Metroid game, it being an actual after Fusion, you know, actual like end of, it's like the capper of the Metroid saga as we know it from the original games. So like that's cool. Um, and I'm really excited for it. And I'm gonna probably be talking about a lot of it in October, especially in lead up to Switch OLED coming out, because I can't tell me that white Switch OLED is not intentional for Dread. If
With
they
like
would
any,
just call it the Metroid Dread system. Ugh, anyways, and by the way, guys, the Switch OLED I'm giving away that you only have to be subscribed to win is the white version. I ain't screwing you over with no neon version. You're getting the white version. Um, But and by the way, they're making more of the white version than the other one anyway, so it's going to be the most common version. Uh, I'm going to actually go with a different game coming out in the same month um, for Switch, and I'm going to go with, because I thought about going with Halo Infinite because I'm very curious about that game, and they're making the multiplayer free, which I think is a brilliant
big
move
move.
in the world of all the like, because Halo multiplayer is not battle royale. So like, you're in the midst of all these other free battle royale games. This isn't that, and it's going to be free. That's really cool. That's really cool. And I'll be able to play that on my PC and everything and enjoy it. But I'm actually really looking forward to Mario Party Superstars. And I think it's because, and I'm probably getting my hopes up, that this is the Mario Party game that I've been waiting for. See, the last Mario Party game was really good. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it needed more maps. Definitely needed more maps. And this one suffers from the same problem of limited maps, at least at launch. I think they were promising there'll be free DLC maps in the future, but and we didn't get that on the last Mario Party game. And I really like the mini games in the last one, but this one's like taking some of the best maps and making them modern, taking some of the best mini games, making them modern, actual quality of life improvements. Like, we can all shake our dice at the same goddamn time. Thank God. Such a time saver. Actual Mario Party online matches. Yeah, there probably won't be a ranking system because this is Nintendo. But damn, I could actually play full Mario Party with my friends. I get it. They sort of added that to the current one. I understand. But like, this is to the next level. You can all agree to stop playing, save state it, come back to it later. You can't do that with the current update to the current one. Like, everything they're doing with this game to me is what it feels like I've always wanted to happen with Mario Party. And now it's happening. I'm keeping my skeptic glasses on because I got really hyped for Mario Golf and I got let down. They promised me an RPG single player mode, and that's not really what they gave you. So I'm gonna be skeptical, but I did really enjoy the last Mario Party. So I'm probably still gonna really enjoy this one, even if I don't play online. But I'm very excited about the online functionality and features, and I'm just hopeful that they do it right. Hopeful. I'm more confident in games like Metroid Dread. More confident in even the new WarioWare game. I think those games know what they are, and they're going to dominate what they are. I'm Advance Wars 1+2 reboot camp or whatever. Like, dude, looks great. Those games know what they are, and they're going to own it. Mario Party knows what it is, but still hasn't given me the same sort of... This is the weird thing. Hasn't given me the same sort of functionality to play with friends online as Amiibo Festival. And that's a crying shame, because Amiibo Festival really wasn't a very good game. But it had better online functionality than Mario Parties have had. And that makes no sense to me that shitty, tossed together by probably 5 people in the corner of the office Amiibo Festival game to justify Amiibos and their uses, and make it all Animal Crossing based, because God forbid we make an Animal Crossing game for the Wii U, which, I mean, in hindsight, they're probably glad they didn't. But it's just, it's baffling to me that they haven't been able to match that functionality in a Mario Party game until apparently right now. But again, I was also really excited about Mario Golf, not just the single-player RPG, but the online. And then you get to the online, and what made... So I think that, like, with Mario Golf, Nintendo lost sight of, or Camelot lost sight of, why people were excited for the RPG mode and why they were excited to play Mario Golf online. And that's because Mario Golf Old School was about tournaments and climbing a ladder and trying to become the number 1 ranked player. And there's nowhere in this game, single player or multiplayer, that you can do that. Oh, you can win a tournament. It doesn't rank you anywhere. Like, there's no rankings online. There's also no rankings in an RPG single player mode. In fact, you play one tournament at the very beginning. Never play a tournament again. They talk about tournaments over and over again, like 50 times. Oh, you get the platinum rank and you're done. Well, I got the platinum rank and I've won exactly one tournament. And you didn't even have to win that tournament, by the way. So it's like, I cleaned up courses. Where's the RPG mode? Oh, I cleaned up golf courses. Now they're all open and usable, and the mode just ends. And it's like, no. So the mode's a glorified tutorial. That's what they should have just called it. Single player is a glorified tutorial. And I'm worried that, well, I don't expect online leaderboards for Mario Party, although I think that would be really cool. Like, if they had your stats of how often you you somehow figured out the lucky dice and how to, make your average roll a 6 or something. Or if you figured out, hey, you know what? I win 75% of the time I play online. Like that would be really cool to have, like, because if you go to things like Madden online or Call of Duty online, they have all these stats, your wins, your losses, and like all these micro stats that are just really cool to sift through. It'd be nice if they would actually do that for Mario Party and maybe make it a little bit competitive. You can have your friendly mode, but also make it, hey, for people that want to play it competitively, let them. Who cares? It's Mario Party. I mean, we all know there's RNG and luck involved in some things. It is what it is, but maybe they're really damn good at the mini games. They mastered the mini games, so they win all the mini game stars. I don't know. I just think it would be a lot of fun. But that's just my personal take. I'm just hopeful. I think I just have a lot of hope, and I probably shouldn't. A lot of these Mario, like any sort of spin-off games, I should like the game I should be most excited for is a game that isn't announced yet, and that's the next Mario Kart game.
Oh man. See, Mario Kart.
Literally, Nintendo's sitting on a 20+ million seller anytime they want to release it. They just have to decide they want to release a Mario Kart game. So it's like, when? Maybe that's what they launched Switch Pro with? I don't know. Like I get it. Mario Kart 8 is selling so well, but like, how well would like a new Mario Kart sell with 90 million Switches on the market?
And look, too, that game was a Wii U game that still looks great on Nintendo Switch. A little bit better resolution.
I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best Mario Kart game ever, in my opinion. Most content, most characters, most tracks. And in the deluxe version, they gave us the good multiplayer, not the crappy one of the original Mario Kart 8. But still, even with the good multiplayer, there's some older maps I wish they had for that multiplayer. That's a little bit better. But man, just literally, Mario Kart 8's nice, and I get that like with every Mario Kart they try to add like unique things. I don't even know if they need to add unique things. Just give us another 24 tracks. Give us 8 more cups. Give us double the amount of playable characters, more customization on the carts, and boom, Mario Kart 9. Like, I want it so bad.
So well.
Thank you, Loki Ravenstorm, by the way. I saw your $5 chat. I know you're heading out for the night. Thanks, man. Appreciate the support. The shots for you, buddy.
If there was a one Nintendo game, though, one franchise of theirs that could really benefit from, here's the base game, we're just going to keep adding DLC, would be Mario Party, which gets your hopes up that much more. But what a perfect formula. Now you've got the game, you've got nostalgia in there. All right, every several months you're releasing some little quality of life update, but also for $7, here's another bunch of classic minigames from an N64 entry, a GameCube entry, whatever. That would be a good system to follow for Mario Kart, Mario Party, I should say. I was hoping that Nintendo would do something similar once they brought Mario Kart 8 to Nintendo Switch. They would handle it with, all right, once in a while we're going to release new tracks, and that would be the thing. Nothing ever happened. You know that a Mario Kart 9 has got to be in development and probably on the closer side to being complete, if not already complete. Just when do you release it? It's almost, you realize like Mario Kart and Nintendo Switch, they're almost at the same point. Why release a new model? The old Nintendo Switch is selling well. Why release a new Mario Kart? The older one's selling well. But, we need that momentum to continue, so I think a 9 would do amazingly well. Tomorrow's going to be that, Japanese quarter financial result, which represents the whole world's sales data. Mario Kart 8, when you add the Wii U version, it already passed Wii. On Nintendo Switch alone, it's very close to passing Wii as just a standalone port, being the best-selling Mario Kart ever. Now, we need a few things. A few things that seem obvious. We don't know if we'll ever get.
I mean, is this really going to be the first console generation or any generation of Nintendo that we don't get a Mario Kart game since the SNES?
I don't think
like
so.
a new one, a new Mario Kart game, I should say.
And Nintendo, they're so strong right now that I think we have yet to see the best game or the best single year in Nintendo Switch's life. Like, you might say that. if Breath of the Wild 2 comes out next year, I think that's going to be the best game on the system. Will it be as groundbreaking as the original? No, I don't think it can be.
No, I don't
But
think that's possible. Yeah.
could it be better? It could very well be better if they, fix some people's issues here and there, make it, bigger, prettier. It could be better, but you throw in some other potentials like a Mario Kart 9. What do you think? First, like, final answer from you. Well, not to put you on the spot. I'm gonna try to put myself on the spot too. Do you think Nintendo comes out with a Plus Pro new Nintendo Switch model at sometime next year? And if they do, what do you think is the ultimate game that is released alongside it to show off that power, to get the talk going? We're talking time of the year, if it's going to happen. That's a fully loaded
You're
question.
putting me on the spot. You're trying to get me to say it's coming out with Breath of the Wild 2, aren't you?
Oh man,
That's
well,
been like what rumors were even this year. Like, oh, it's coming out with Breath of the Wild 2. Like, look, I want Breath of the Wild 2 at 60 FPS, so I would love for it to just release alongside it. I don't think it's going to happen next year. I could be wrong. You think about it, it was 2019 for the Switch Lite, and then the version 2 revision with the shrunk down die. Now 2 years later, we got the Switch OLED. I kind of feel like it's a 2-year cycle. So like in 2 years is when we get the next hardware. But then again, thing to consider, and I've been saying this all along, is that Switch OLED is basically just this, but better. So then this should go away eventually. And if this goes away in a year and they drop the price of Switch OLED to match the price point of this when they decide we're discontinuing this model, but we're dropping the price of the Switch OLED to compensate, and it's going to be $300, it's going to replace it. It's basically a straight. I mean, the writing's on the wall that Switch OLED. I mean, literally, guys, it has a bigger screen, but it's only 0.1 of a millimeter wider. Otherwise, it's the exact same dimensions. So it's literally this without a bezel and a better screen. And with obviously a better kickstand and all that. But it's clearly a replacement. So the caveat is, if next holiday this is discontinued, replaced with Switch OLED, and they drop it to $300, then it's like, well, that kind of just opened the marketplace back up for another model at $400.
Mm-hmm.
And do they say, screw it, we're going to launch it? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it feels like, based on Switch so far, it's an every 2-year thing. So the next iteration of Switch, or next change in Switch, will be in 2023. That's what I've been leaning towards for a while. But damn, would I like to know Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be 60 FPS. That'd be... Mwah. And like, Breath of the Wild 2 already looks really great in that trailer, but it's like, yeah, but it needs 60 FPS. It's like, I want 60 FPS in Breath of the Wild 2. I want 60 FPS in everything that Nintendo puts out. But we'll see. Like, I think next year has the potential to be, I think, almost like a 2017, if not better. 2017 to me right now is the best Switch year yet. They really, that 9-month period, they killed it. So many, I mean, the right Wii U ports, like Mario Kart, the right new games of Splatoon 2 and Odyssey. Obviously, Breath of the Wild was kind of a sort of a port dual release kind of thing. Like, they had the right sort of things. And heck, if people don't forget, hey, guess what? Mario plus Rabbids was a 2017 game. And we're getting a new one next year that looks even better. Like, I didn't think it could look better. You can definitely tell this studio that Ubisoft's had more time with Switch now, because this game looks even better. Splatoon 3, to me, visually anyways, looks even better than Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2, to me, especially based on when it came out, was probably a Wii U game that they ported to Switch. I'm like, any of those really early Switch, like even Odyssey, I feel like all those games were originally being built for Wii U. So like an Odyssey 2 or the next Mario game, when the hell is that coming? It's been since 2017. When the hell? They got to be making something. They didn't just sit on their hands and, oh, we're only making that Bowser's Fury mode. We're not doing anything else. Like, get out of here. You're clearly working on something. When the hell are we getting that? Maybe that is going to be next year. And that's just a surprise they're keeping in the tank. They're keeping that bullet in the chamber. They're like, oh, we could show this anytime. Why show it now when we got Legends Arceus, Splatoon 3, Sparks of Hope, and Breath of the Wild 2 next year? Why do we have to unleash that chamber right now? We can wait. Let's let some of those games come out. Then at E3, be like, by the way, this holiday, Odyssey 2. Wait, what? Okay, this is literally 2017 all over again. What the hell else are we going to get? Next thing you know, we're going to be getting some major third-party port that we didn't expect. Of course, knowing our luck, they'll announce GTA 6 next year and then finally say we're getting GTA 5 on Switch. Which I still to this day don't know why we don't have it. It's not a hardware. Like, it was on the Xbox 360. Okay, we could have GTA 5, but I know they focus more on the multiplayer and that's where all their money's made, but still, I don't know. And that's the thing, like, I'm really excited for what's happening next year with Nintendo's games, but it's like, what's going to happen with third party? I think third party is the interesting one. Because if you think about Nintendo's major third party support, yes, we've had the Mortal Kombats, the Mortal Kombat 11. We did have the Civilization 6, the Diablo, which that's, a whole issue with that company right now. I don't know if people want to talk about games coming from them at the moment. But a lot of the major third party support, even though we talk about the Witcher 3s and all that, have been things like Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2, Wolfenstein New Colossus. That's now a Microsoft studio. And for all I could tell, those games are all going to be exclusive to Xbox and Xbox platforms. Xbox Game Pass platforms, I should say. So Switch isn't one of those. At least it's not right now. Maybe it will be in the future, but it's not right now. So that's like, even forget Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. That feels like a whole crop of third-party games. Yeah, we're just not going to get anymore. We got Skyrim. Yeah, you're not getting the next Elder Scrolls. It's not happening. It's going at Xbox only or Game Pass only platforms. So I'm wondering, like, Nintendo's going to reassure us. Like this year, you can argue what's our big third-party games this year? Well, we have No More Heroes 3. Monster Hunter Rise was obviously a huge one from Capcom, and Stories too. Those are two big ones from Capcom, but the contracts they locked in, they'll eventually go into PC as well. Shin Megami Tensei 5. That's the other big one coming later this year, which, by the way, it looks really great. And if you love Persona and you love that kind of stuff, Shin Megami Tensei 5, go play. You're going to love it. But what the hell's happening after this year for third parties in terms of multi-platform games? Shin Megami Tensei 5 is exclusive. Monster Hunter Rise, exclusive. Where's our Mortal Kombat 11? Oh, we get NBA 2K again, and we'll probably get it again next year. We're going to keep getting NBA 2K until they stop making them for PlayStation 4. But, like, what's going to be our big multi-platform? Is that going to be the big multi-platform game next year? It's just going to be another NBA 2K game, which I'm glad they've... I want to give 2K a lot of credit, by the way, for NBA 2K. It's not a dumbed-down version. It's the full version of the game every single year with the modern engine every single year. They just half the frame rate and lower the resolution. And they give you a playable, worthwhile experience on the go. And I love that. And FEA for not doing that with FIFA. Thank you so much for actually giving us the real NBA 2K game on Switch. And continuing to do it while next-gen platforms are out. I really appreciate them doing that. Obviously, it must be selling well enough for them to continue to do that as well. And that's a good sign for future support from that company on a future Nintendo platform. I don't think that company, obviously, they're also parented by the company that owns Rockstar that could give us more. But, whatever, it at least is a good sign that they might try to do more on Nintendo's next platform since they're seeing success with NBA 2K. But I'm just like, what's going to be that big third-party game next year? That's multi-plat coming to Switch. It's going to shock everyone. Like, it's funny. We're at this point now where every multi-platform third-party game announced that comes to Switch, it's like a shocker that it's coming to Switch. People are surprised. And now with next gen out there, I can think of one game right now that's been delayed. Gollum. People don't talk about it. It's a Lord of the Rings game, and people are, those games have been really hit and miss over the years. But like Gollum looks really promising. At least it did in the initial footage. It's delayed now, so we'll have to see when we see it again. That was a next-gen game that was going to come to Switch as well. Supposedly day and date. We'll have to see. Maybe it ends up getting canceled. Is that going to be the game? I mean, we're still sitting here waiting for the Lego Star Wars Skywalker saga. And everyone's waiting for that. what's happening with that game, why it's in development hell, because I saw this game back at E3 2019 behind closed doors, and it looked amazing. It looked like the greatest Lego, I mean, forget Lego game. It might be the greatest Star Wars game I've ever seen. The game looks, I don't know, did you get to see it behind closed doors? It was so, oh my God. Oh, that game.
It looked great, and that's already, 2 years ago.
Yeah, right? Like, and I understand
2 years
COVID,
ago.
so maybe they've had a hard time getting it to the finish line. And I gotta tell you guys, that Star Wars, like the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga game is very ambitious. Like, you've
9
never,
games.
it,
9 movies in
it's
one
all
game.
9 movies in a single game. And yes, you can travel between the planets and oh my God. It's
Voice
insane.
acting,
The scope of
dozens of
this game
characters.
is absolutely insane. And like, I don't even like calling it a Lego game because I feel like that's almost discrediting it, because it's so far more than just breaking stuff and building little things to solve puzzles like a lot of Lego. Like, it's so much more than that. It is Star Wars at the core with a Lego aesthetic, and it just works. And it's so, oh my God. It's hard to explain, like, because in most Lego games, everything's built out of Legos. That's not necessarily, there's parts of this terrain that's actual terrain from the movies. It's not just Lego versions of that terrain. It's, oh my God. I'm so pumped by this. I've been, I know it's supposedly still coming out this year. Still no release date, so. I mean, play it, oh man. But like, I don't know, what's going to be that big third-party game? I have no idea. I'm just hoping like Mortal Kombat 11 sold well enough to get the next one. I'm hopeful for that. We'll see. We did get the big thing with Mortal Kombat 11 that I give the developers a lot of credit for is that was day and date. A lot of Switch versions are not day and date. So that was a big deal to me. But I'm not a fighting game fan, so I just kind of want it to come just for variety on the platform.
At some point,
Someone mentioned Bayonetta 3. So again, Bayonetta 3 is another one of those games that falls in with that's going to be exclusive to the platform. You know, like Nintendo. I mean, that's even more because Nintendo pays for it. Like Project Triangle Strategy might come out first on Switch, but then on everything else, or maybe it releases on everything else at the same time. But like, what's going to be that third-party game that shocks people? Like Witcher 3 was a massive shock when that was announced. Like, wait, that's coming to Switch? Switch can't run that. And then you play it and you're like, you know what? This is a passable experience. And then especially after they added the extra settings that you can adjust in the game, it became an even more passable experience. We're like, oh yeah, we're not going to get more than 30 FPS, but we can, up the sharpening, do this, do that. And also, you know what? This doesn't look half bad on the go. I can play this. And like Doom Eternal again, doesn't look half bad on the go. Doesn't look great on the TV. Especially when you see it on other things. Like, yeah, you see it on other platforms. It looks way better on TV. But, I mean, on the go, it's passable. So what's going to be like Doom Eternal was like that big shocking game, like the most recent one I can think of. So, like, what's the next one? I have no idea. Is there going to be a next one? Or now that we're in the next gen, is that it? We're done with the impressive downports to Switch. At least the current Switch hardware.
I'm hoping for something like an Injustice 3, we know that some of the WB stuff coming out, like the Suicide Squad kill the Justice League and Gotham Knights. We know that's only on PS5 Series X, but will you give us an Injustice 3 or a Street Fighter 6 or something like that?
Street Fighter 6, Elijah in the chat trying to remind us to hype up Sonic Rangers.
Sonic, Guardians of the Galaxy, not a giant.
Guardians of the Galaxy's coming, but again, it's coming as a streaming game.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't have a problem with so. I mentioned before I don't have an issue with streaming games, and I do think streaming games is a nice way to get AAA games on Switch that can't run. But the more and more of these games that come out on Switch, we got what? We got that game. We got Control, Hitman 3. I know Resident Evil 7's available, but only in Japan. I think there was one other one that's only in Japan. I can't remember right now. But anyways, we got like 3 or 4 major big AAA streaming games on Switch, and I think that we're just going to keep getting more and more and more of those games. And more does feel like there needs to be some sort of service for these games, because the selling point of these games is the same issue Stadia has. $60 a pop to play a streaming game, you can't guarantee you can always play. And that's a hard sell on Switch. Like, oh yeah, the streaming's fine, especially when you're wired in, it's fine, but it's also, I'm spending $60 to stream a game that I can't really play on the go. I have to play it in docked mode. I mean, some people have no problems with their Wi-Fi connections and can do it. Like my router has no problem with my Switch, so I can stream games on my Switch in my house. But still, it's God, this is where I keep hoping that Xbox and Nintendo are working together. So like xCloud comes to Switch, and that replaces this and gives us a clean way to stream games, or that's like a fee you pay a month instead. I don't know. Maybe that's just my hope. Maybe some people are fine. Maybe people do like Google Stadia's model, because after all, you can subscribe to Pro and you do get some games for free. But all the games you really care about aren't on Pro. You have to buy. So maybe people are okay with that. I don't know. Google Stadia still technically exists. So maybe it's doing okay. Like, people keep thinking it's in trouble because they closed the game studios. And I'm like, or they just closed the game studios because Amazon did too, and so did everyone else, because they suck at making games. Making games is expensive. Starting new studios from companies that have never done it before, it's hard. Ask Microsoft. Microsoft had game studios, and they still struggled to found new ones. They had to go buy a bunch. So, like, it's not an easy thing to do. So it's almost like, I don't know if that's a sign that Stadia is doing bad. Stadia is still around. It's still coming to new platforms. And now I guess they're trying to, last thing I heard is they're trying to sell it to companies to be able to rebrand it as their own streaming service now or something. Like, is something Stadia is trying to do. I don't know. All I know is the more of these streaming games that come, the more I feel like Nintendo needs something to consolidate it and make it more affordable. I don't know. Just more realistic. But then again, maybe the sales of these streaming games are just fine. I have no idea. Maybe Hitman 3 sold 1 million copies on Switch and we just haven't even heard about it. I mean, I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. I think we would have heard that it sold 1 million. I think they'd be like, oh shit, 1 million on Switch? We'd be getting a hell of a lot more streaming games right now, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that's going to do it, I think, for this podcast. It was a little bit of extra long one, but we have not had a podcast in a while. We had a lot to talk about. There's a lot more we could have talked about. There's so much stories going on. We didn't even bother to touch on the stuff happening at Activision and Blizzard. I'm just going to kind of let that keep developing over time, and we'll cover it when, I don't know, maybe towards the conclusion of it all. And which, I mean, there's active lawsuits, so it could be years before we have any conclusions. But we'll see what happens with that. We'll talk about that more in a future podcast when more stuff happens. There has been a few moving parts. President of Blizzard is no longer there. He stepped down, probably forcibly so, but contract reasons, they probably couldn't just outright fire the guy, so they just made him step down, or he was going to lose his pension or something. Who the hell knows? And then the HR person was also let go. At least that person looks like they might have been fired more so than them stepping down, but I don't know. There's more that's going to happen. There's now 2 lawsuits happening because the people who walked out are pissed about the law firm they hired to do their internal review, because they're anti-union law firm, and like clearly they're trying to make sort of a union. There's a lot of bad going on there. So that's something we'll talk about in the future, I think, when all the information's out there. Because right now we have the lawsuits and all the allegations and some really bad responses by Bobby Kotick. Some words he's saying publicly, or did say publicly, that just didn't make sense. When you have the state of California coming at you and your initial response is, you're lucky we're in California. We could just leave. Like, okay. Bye. I don't think California cares. See ya. Like, that's not going to change the lawsuit because they're suing you for things that already happened. But sure. Like, I don't know. If Bobby Kotick survives this, I'd be very surprised. I'll just say that. The investors are really pissed off right now. This isn't even like, This isn't just the employees. The investors are mad. And when the investors are mad, that's usually the end of the CEO. So we'll see what happens there. I know there's going to be some cheering in the streets of the Blizzard employees, I'm sure. Even Activision employees when that happens. There's already been controversy with that CEO, by the way, guys. For those who don't know, he barely got his bonus. His most recent bonus barely got approved by investors for like $150 million or whatever. It was something nuts. And the guy's just making bank while the company posts record profits and continues to fire people all year long. So that makes sense. We're making more profits than ever, so let's just fire people. I guess that's how they maintain their profits. I have no idea. You figure Call of Duty Warzone being a baller game, making them bank would be why. Figure the WoW expansion's doing well, or WoW Classic doing well would be why they're making all this money. But nah, we gotta fire people. I don't know, that company frustrates me. People get frustrated about Ubisoft. Activision frustrates me way more than Ubisoft and even EA does. Like, oh my god, Activision Blizzard. Ah! Just my mind hurts thinking about it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to give a shout out to Paul Gale. Do you have anything you want to let people know, like where they can find you, or like what maybe you're working on? If you have any new videos or articles or anything you're working on?
I do. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, which is on the smaller side, which is just Paul Gale Network. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. I have a website. My site is kind of a variety site, and it deals with martial arts tutorial. Even if you look at my YouTube channel, there's a lot of stuff that might not make sense to one market. Like I have people that follow me specifically for my karate tutorial of kata and personal defense and personal training. They see some gaming stuff that I cover. They're like, I don't
What the hell is
care
that?
less.
Yeah,
But then you have the other side. It's almost like I should have other channels. But you know what? When you follow my site or you follow my channel, what you get are my interests, right?
Yep.
And that's what I like to talk about, and that's cool. So, as far as anything new goes, I did a fun thing almost 10 years ago, which was a body transformation video where I went Super Saiyan. And it was just like several weeks of exercising. I cut it before and after, and I went from Goku to Super Saiyan Goku. Since that was like 10 years ago, that's actually something that I'm working on now. I'm going to do a sequel follow-up because I'm 38 now instead of 28. So that's the only thing major that's like new and entertaining that's probably going to come within the next several months. Aside from that, still talking to developers, trying to catch news stories, following up on games, and yeah, appreciate you having me on the show. Like I said, as a fan of you, a fan of yours, a fan of fellow gaming and Nintendo, talking to like-minded people of a similar age group, and just having your audience, which you always have a lot of cool people talking in the comments. Sometimes someone doesn't agree, but you're always cool with that. It's awesome being a part of your show today, and I appreciate having me
problem.
on.
It was nice having you on.
Really
great
cool.
way to kick off the podcast comeback. We'll be back again, guys, a week from today at 8 p.m. Gosh, I don't even know what day it is. The 11th, I believe. So yeah, we'll be back on the 11th. The podcast is back to being every single week on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central Time. So I hope to see you guys on next week. Eric should hopefully be back then, along with obviously another special guest. We have a special guest every single week for our podcast. And you can find this podcast pretty much everywhere. Obviously, the video version's right here on YouTube. You want the audio version, it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on the Google or Play or whatever the heck thing they have. We upload our audio version to an anchor.fm account, which you can also listen to it there. And they just send it to like 70 other places. So we're everywhere. I have no idea what place is bigger. I think the stats told me that our biggest listener base comes from iTunes, but it doesn't really matter to me. I don't really care where you listen. Also, if you really enjoy this episode, I always encourage you to go to wherever you enjoy listening to it, especially the audio version, and drop a review, give a user review. Let me know, even if you think the podcast sucks. Let me know, like what can be done better. What kind of guests do you think would be better suited for different things? Do you think the way it's organized? Do you think I'm an idiot and I talk too much? Do you think the setup looks dumb? The lighting, whatever, give me honest reviews. And if you think this podcast is awesome and it's your favorite show to listen to, then one, I apologize for not having one for like 6 weeks. I don't know what you did with your time. Probably found better shows. And if it is your favorite, hey, drop that 5-star review and let us know how much you love the show and what your favorite parts are of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Paul, for taking time out of your day. Sort of as a last-minute guest with Eric that told me I'm out of here. That bastard. So thank you so much for popping on today. I appreciate it. And hopefully all you guys had a very good time. We'll catch you next week. Otherwise, you guys know I got a new video dropping tomorrow and a stream tomorrow night. It's Thursday. Same thing on Friday. Weekend's off. It is what it is. Catch you guys later.